Chapter 258. Kill her. Sumo's order to the little white pig was wrong. That was because the female cultivator who devoured corpses could not be considered a living person. She was just walking on the road from death to resurrection. Humph! The little white pig didn't care whether the other party was dead or alive. Sumo's order was exactly what it wanted. It couldn't hold back anymore. Because the soul energy emitted from the woman's body made it drool for a long time. Although the little white pig had eaten a lot of elixirs, it was still a Dracophant soul eater. Soul energy was the best nourishment for the little white pig. Whoosh! A white light flashed, and two fangs appeared. The little white pig went straight for the female cultivator. From Sumo's point of view, the female cultivator was only at the nascent soul realm. The little white pig had followed her for hundreds of years and eaten countless elixirs. It should be enough to deal with her. Sure enough, the little white pig pounced on the female cultivator without the slightest fear. Puff! All of a sudden, Hump's fangs pierced into the female cultivator's heart. That was a common tactic of the little white pig. However, the little white pig's round eyes widened. Because there was no stream of blood at all, Hump seemed to have forgotten that it was a female cultivator who was already dead. The immortal heart was meaningless to the walking dead. In fact, it was true. The little white pig's attack actually made the female cultivator not move at all. The seal in her hand didn't change at all. Her nostrils continued to move, and they were even more rapid than before. Little White's attack seemed to have accelerated the recovery of her soul. Humph! How could the little white pig tolerate such disregard? Its eyes widened even more. At the same time, the fangs instantly emitted a strong white light. Soul devouring. This was the specialty of the Dracophant soul eater. Sumo had seen the little white pig suck some cultivators dry. Soul energy was also the little white pig's favorite delicacy. Chi-chi. However, this time, the little white pig's soul-devouring technique was ineffective. A white light flashed, but there was no change to the female cultivator. Surprisingly, the little white pig did not absorb any soul energy at all. Humph! Humph! At that moment, the little white pig's face turned red. This was because it felt an extremely strong resistance that was resisting its soul-devouring technique. The female cultivator's body seemed to have no meridians. It didn't look like a human body. The little white pig couldn't absorb her soul energy at all. At this moment, Sumo, who was watching the battle from a distance, also raised an eyebrow. In theory, since the female cultivator had started breathing, she must possess soul energy. However, the little white pig could not absorb it. This was too much for the little white pig. It was like having a table of delicacies in front of you when you were the most hungry, but he just couldn't eat it. The little white pig snorted angrily. Sumo thought to herself, could it be that it wasn't a puppet that had started to recover its soul? At this moment, the female cultivator suddenly moved. She seemed to have finished recovering her soul. Her body emitted a faint white brilliance. She opened her eyes slightly. Although they were a little empty, they weren't gray. It should be said that from her external appearance, she was already very close to a true cultivator. However, the last bit of her spiritual wisdom had yet to be awakened. Whoosh! The female cultivator suddenly raised her hand. Her fingers were like hooks as she directly grabbed at the little white pig. Unfortunately, the little white pig was not a random zombie that could be caught at will. The little fellow suddenly pulled out its fangs and gave up on devouring the soul. In midair, it directly retreated. However, at that moment, the female cultivator actually flew up. Chi-chi, with a shake of her arm, like a long snake, she once again grabbed at the little white pig. That move was very special. It seemed that the female cultivator's arm could be extended indefinitely. A puppet. Sumo confirmed it again. That must be a puppet. However, that puppet was too special. It could recover its soul, but its physical body would not change. It would still be a zombie. That was equivalent to a cultivator that had both the strengths of a zombie and a puppet. At that moment, Sumo was a little shocked, because it was almost equivalent to creating a human or to creating a cultivator. In Sumo's knowledge, it was almost impossible to accomplish. However, She didn't know whether this female cultivator was a coincidence or created by someone behind the scenes. If someone created it, that cultivator behind the scenes would be called a god. Even in the inheritance of the senior brothers and sisters of the Windwheel sect, there was no such method. Not to mention whether it was possible or not, it was unheard of. Of course, the current realm of the female cultivator was not high. Moreover, it seemed that she had just recovered, and her expression was very dull. Her arm grabbed at the little white pig. However, the little white pig leaned to the right, dodged the attack, and then opened its mouth. Puff! A light blue flame directly sprayed out. The 5 elements techniques were extremely common for the dragon elephant soul devouring beast. However, the blue flame of the little white pig was definitely not an ordinary cultivator's flame. It was a flame that could burn a nascent soul. Whoosh! At the same time, the little white pig raised its front hooves. The wind came. In an instant, the entire ancient courtyard was blown by a strong wind. The fire borrowed the wind and spread several feet. In an instant, it turned into a sea of fire. Then, the female cultivator was trapped within it. However, the female cultivator actually formed a seal with her hands. It was not a complicated seal, but a nascent soul-level technique. Ice River. Following that, the female cultivator's technique. Starting from the feet of the female cultivator, a cold air spread outwards. Chi-chi, crack, crack. The cold air spread out and instantly turned into ice, spreading like a spider web. The flame that the little white pig summoned was directly frozen, and the fire gradually subsided. Oomph! The cute expression in the eyes of the little white pig disappeared, and it was replaced by a touch of red light. As one of the 3 divine beasts of the Pure Land, the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast was definitely not a good one. If anyone thought that the little white pig was a cute pet, then they were gravely mistaken. Previously, the little white pig had always been playing around, and it did not do anything serious. However, that female cultivator actually broke its technique. It had failed several times, and that female cultivator actually dared to capture it. If this could be tolerated, what cannot? Humph! The chubby body of the little white pig was suspended in the air. It let out a long white breath. At this time, the aura of the little white pig was changing. A bloodthirsty aura began to spread out. Moreover, the snow-like body of the little white pig gradually emitted a faint black aura. Sumo looked at the appearance of the little white pig and couldn't help but smile. He knew that the little guy was angry. However, Sumo was happy to see it angry. Otherwise, what was the use of just eating and not working every day? Humph! The little white pig angrily snorted and directly rushed towards the female cultivator. Fangs in front, white light. Human. However, he didn't see any other moves. Sumo was also surprised, because he had already tried using fangs, but it was ineffective. Could it be that the little white pig wanted to turn himself into a meat bomb? Seeing the little white pig coming, the female cultivator crossed her arms in front of her chest, forming a defensive posture. At the same time, a strange sound came from her throat. Boom! She opened her mouth again, and a black light went straight towards the little white pig. It turned out to be a magic weapon, with the aura of a soul-dispelling cultivator. Sumo was surprised, because the little white pig had never experienced such a battle. However, at that moment, a cracking sound came from under the ribs of the little white pig. A pair of silver-white wings, each 3 feet long, suddenly spread out like a flying scythe. Sumo didn't expect that the little white pig seemed to have evolved. Chapter 259. Whoosh! The little white pig was like a soaring pig. The silver wings under its ribs were like shining scythes. That pair of silver wings was definitely powerful. The little white pig didn't care about the treasure the female cultivator spat out. Instead, it fearlessly charged forward. In fact, it didn't even see what treasure the female cultivator used. Sumo, on the other hand, saw it clearly. The treasure the female cultivator spat out looked like a black ball. The black ball had a hint of a soul-dissolving aura, but it wasn't a real soul-dissolving treasure. It was just a powerful attack from a treasure, like a cannonball. But the little white pig wasn't afraid. The little white pig didn't slow down at all. Its left wing flashed, like a large blade flashing in the cold night. TCH, boom! In that instant, the silver wings sliced the black sphere in half, as if it were a melon. The black ball fell to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. But the little white pig didn't stop. The red light in its eyes became brighter, its speed increased. Just now, in order to block the black ball, the little white pig's body tilted slightly. But now, its right wing was aimed at the female cultivator's neck. Its goal was clear. Everything happened in an instant. TCH, the silver wing flashed, like a hand raising a blade. Plop! The female cultivator couldn't dodge the little white pig's wing. Her head fell to the ground. At the same time, strands of white energy emitted from her neck. The little white pig's eyes brightened, because that was the soul energy it had been searching for. The little white pig raised its nose. Oomph! Hiss! The strands of soul energy were all absorbed by the little white pig's body. At that moment, the little white pig's wings slowly retracted. Its skin also returned to its snowy white color. It squinted its eyes, looking like it was enjoying it. Souls were a delicacy to the Dracophant's soul-devouring beast. The soul energy instantly soothed the anxiety in its heart. The female cultivator's body began to wither rapidly. As soon as the soul chi dissipated, his entire body seemed to crumble apart. In the end, it really turned into a pile of dirt. However, the soil was divided into 5 colors: green, white, gold, black, and fire. At the same time, it emitted wisps of smoke. 5-color divine soil. Sumo frowned slightly. The 5-color divine soil was a legendary material used to create top-notch puppets. However, it was rumored that it was extremely difficult to obtain. In the center of the Pure Land, there was a 5-color divine soil mine, and it was extremely difficult to mine. However, no one knew if the legend was true or false. Sumo had only heard about it. This was his first time seeing the 5-color divine soil. Ding, ding, dang, dang. Ding, ding, dang, dang, dang. At this moment, a gust of wind chime echoed in the night. It was clear and melodious, lingering in the air. The sound of the wind chime came from the blue-clothed woman standing on the ancient courtyard wall. After the little white pig finished absorbing the soul energy, it turned around and landed on Sumo's shoulder. It looked at the blue-clothed female cultivator adorably, with a harmless look on its face. Sumo raised her head slightly and smiled at the blue-clothed female cultivator. Miss Guiying, you've been here for a long time. What do you think of the battle? The blue-clothed woman was extremely beautiful, graceful, and had an extraordinary temperament. On her arm, there was a purple gold wind chime. When the wind blew, it tinkled. However, Sumo couldn't see the other party's realm at all. Undead realm? That was Sumo's first reaction, because Sumo only knew that above the deity tribulation was the undead. From the deity tribulation to the undead, it was an absolute gap. However, deep in the blue-clothed woman's eyes, there was a trace of sadness that couldn't be erased. This blue-clothed female cultivator and the blue-clothed young girl Sumo saw in Guiying's illusion were clearly the same person. However, the blue-clothed female cultivator in front of her seemed to be a few years older. In fact, Sumo had already seen the blue-clothed female cultivator. It seemed that the blue-clothed female cultivator didn't intend to hide herself. Just now, she just quietly watched the little white pig defeat the puppet and absorb the puppet's soul chi. Therefore, Sumo could conclude that it must be Guiying. In such a Fengling ancient town, no one would come casually. When the blue-clothed female cultivator heard Sumo's words, she smiled faintly and then gently landed in the courtyard. Immediately, she shook her hand and directly collected the pile of 5-colored divine soil. Your puppet? Sumo asked. Yes. The blue-clothed female cultivator nodded gently. When I was young, I made a small doll. It's been a long time since I last came here. I didn't expect that this puppet cultivated to such a stage and even wanted to gather a corpse to revive its soul, almost becoming an adult. The blue-clothed female cultivator spoke calmly, even softly, using the 5-color divine soil to make a small doll. When she was young, Where did this female cultivator come from? Sumo was slightly stunned, because the blue-clothed female cultivator gave people a completely different feeling from Guiying. Guiying's body had a sharp killing intent. However, this blue-clothed female cultivator was very gentle. After collecting the 5-color divine soil, the blue-clothed female cultivator looked at Sumo and said, "Fellow Taoist Su, my name is not Guiying. Guiying is just a shadow puppet of mine." "Then, may I ask for your name?" Sumo slightly cupped his fists. "My surname is Yi." When the blue-clothed female cultivator said her surname, she actually paused slightly, seemingly hesitating. This made Sumo a little puzzled. Under normal circumstances, who would hesitate about their surname? However, it was not convenient for Sumo to ask further. "My name is Yi Wuhui." When the blue-clothed female cultivator said her name, her eyes flashed with a touch of gloominess, making the sadness in her eyes even stronger. Not knowing why, the blue-clothed female cultivator always gave people a feeling that she needed protection. That blue-clothed female cultivator was a pitiful person. "Yi Wuhui." Sumo smiled. He secretly said in his heart, "It seems that this name has a story behind it." "Misty." Sumo once again cupped his fists. "Guiying is just a puppet of yours." However, when it comes to controlling puppets, it was only slightly inferior to me that day. In fact, on that day, if your real body was there, I would definitely not be your opponent. That day, it was actually me who lost. Yi Wuhui shook his head and said with a smile, "Winning or losing, it doesn't matter. Fellow Taoist Su, don't take it to heart. It doesn't matter to me whether I get that small mineral deposit or not. It's just that I left Guiying in the ghost metropolis to protect me. That gamble, she was just doing her part. In fact, it had nothing to do with me. However, I really didn't think that in the Pure Land, Guiying would lose. Guiying is one of my 3 shadow puppets." With that, the blue-clothed Yi Wuhui pointed with one hand, and 3 blue shadows appeared in front of him. The 3 blue shadows were of different shades. However, they all had the appearance of a female cultivator. Whoosh! Yi Wuhui flicked his hand again, and 3 robes draped over the 3 shadows. A purple-robed puppet, that was Guiying. A blue-robed puppet stood in the middle. A red-robed puppet stood closest to Yi Wuhui. "Guiying, immortaling, deviling." Yi Wuhui's mouth curved. "Among them, Guiying's realm is the lowest, barely reaching the undead realm of the Pure Land. Guiying's realm is the lowest, barely reaching the undead realm of the Pure Land." Chapter 260. Ghost Shadow, an undead stage puppet. At that moment, Sumo almost thought that he had misheard, but he knew that he did not. Yi Wuhui had no reason to lie to him. One of Yi Wuhui's puppets was in the undead stage, and it was the weakest one. Then what realm was Yi Wuhui at? All of this was simply unbelievable. Sumo stared blankly at Yi Wuhui. Yi Wuhui did not seem to notice Sumo's expression and continued. "The realms of Celestial Shadow and Devil Shadow are far above Ghost Shadow. They should be in the 9th level of the mysterious immortal stage." 9th level of the mysterious immortal stage? Sumo frowned and asked, "What realm is that?" "Oh." Yi Wuhui shook his head and said with a faint smile, "I forgot that this is a Pure Land. Then the realms of Celestial Shadow and Devil Shadow should be called the 9th level of the God Burial Realm." The 9th level of the God Burial Realm? Sumo shook his head again. This was because he had never heard of this realm. There was no mention of this realm in the inheritance of the Windwheel lineage. It seemed that the Windwheel Masters had deliberately erased the inheritance of this realm. "You don't know about the God Burial Realm?" Yi Wuhui tilted his head and looked at Sumo in confusion. A deity tribulation cultivator should know about this. "I don't know." Sumo shook his head awkwardly. "Sumo, it seems that I have to give you some pointers." Yi Wuhui smiled at Sumo. Her gaze revealed a sense of cunning. At that moment, Yi Wuhui looked very happy. Actually, that should be the original little princess of the Yi family. The little girl who once chased after Purple Windchime outside the Muyun Villa. However, fate changed everything. I'm willing to listen to Senior's teachings. Sumo bowed slightly. Sumo was sincerely asking for advice, so she didn't feel that it was inappropriate. Huh. Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo and couldn't help but laugh. Sumo, you don't have to be so polite. I'm not Guiying, and I don't like people calling me senior. Huh? Sumo was speechless. I can tell you what God burying is. Yi Wuhui could not bear to see Sumo embarrassed, so he hurriedly said, however, I made use of Go Shadow to invite you to Fengling Ancient Town because I have something to ask of you. You must promise to help me later. Sumo didn't agree immediately. Yi Wuhui didn't mind and said, in the Yizong world, cultivation is usually divided into 4 stages. I'm sure you know about the first stage. They are Qi refining, foundation building, core formation, nascent soul, soul transformation, deity tribulation, and undying. Sumo nodded. He was indeed aware of this. Back then, second senior brother had specially taught him these in class, and even asked him with a smile if he was undying. What else could he ask for? Thinking back on that day, second senior brother actually deliberately didn't say many things, or didn't say them in detail. In the Yizong world, the first stage is usually called the Red Dust Realm, Yi Wuhui said. Red Dust Realm. Sumo frowned, because he was more sensitive to the word red dust. What about above the Red Dust Realm? Sumo asked again. Above the Red Dust Realm is the Immortal Realm. Yi Wuhui said, the Immortal Realm is divided into 4 small realms, which are God-burying, world-breaking, sea extermination, and first life immortal. Except for the last first life immortal, each realm is divided into 9 levels. Sumo listened and nodded silently. He felt that Yi Wuhui was opening a door for him. Once this door was opened, Sumo's understanding of cultivation directly increased by several levels. What about above the Immortal Realm? Sumo asked, because he really wanted to hear the name of a realm. Above the Immortal Realm? Yi Wuhui paused, then looked at Sumo. Sumo, the Immortal Realm has completely surpassed the Pure Land world that you are in. In theory, God-burying is the peak of the Pure Land world. You must know that every realm is like a chasm. You only know those realms, but it is actually not good for cultivation, because it will make you think that cultivation is far beyond your reach, and a demon will appear in your heart. Hearing this, Sumo smiled bitterly and shook his head, begging, thank you, Miss Yi. Sumo understand what you said. Actually, I don't want to know about the so-called 4 big stages. I just want to ask, Miss Yi, do you know about the Rebirth Realm? Rebirth Realm? Yi Wuhui smiled. Sumo, you actually know about the Rebirth Realm. Sumo smiled bitterly again and shook his head. I only heard about it from a friend. However, I don't know what the Rebirth Realm is exactly. Above the Immortal Realm is the Rebirth Realm. Yi Wuhui suddenly let out a long sigh. However, I don't know about the Rebirth Realm in the Yizong world, because I'm still under the Rebirth Realm. However what? Sumo asked anxiously. However, Yi Wuhui said, however, I know. Once I cultivate to the Rebirth Realm, I will be immortal. Even if the star world is destroyed, I can come again and be reborn through the Rebirth Realm. Boom! Yi Wuhui's words were like a bolt of lightning, completely splitting apart Sumo's night sky. Above the mortal world was the Immortal Realm. Above the Immortal Realm was the Rebirth Realm. Rebirth Realm. Come again and be reborn through the Rebirth Realm. To Sumo, it was a never-ending source of motivation. As long as he had this realm, Sumo was not afraid of the Rebirth Realm. What he was afraid of was that the Rebirth Realm was fake, because Mu Jinghong said that he would wait for him in the Rebirth Realm. Thank you, Miss Yi. Sumo was very excited and bowed deeply to Yi Wuhui, because Yi Wuhui's words were too important to Sumo. From Yi Wuhui's point of view, she was only talking about some common knowledge of cultivation. There was no need for Sumo to act like this. However, she could feel that Sumo was very excited and did not seem like a deity tribulation cultivator. Yi Wuhui only looked at Sumo and smiled knowingly, because Yi Wuhui knew that one should never pry into a person's deepest secrets. Therefore, when Gue-ing exposed himself that day, Gue-ing screamed. Yi Wu-hui did not want to see that purple-robed man the most. However, she could not avoid that purple-robed man. That purple-robed man destroyed everything and controlled everything. Yi Wu-hui was always kind and considerate. Therefore, she hated that purple-robed man and loved that purple-robed man. Bang! However, at this moment, a funny thing happened. The little white pig was originally lying on Sumo's shoulder. Just now, when Sumo was talking to Yi Wu-hui, that little fellow might have devoured the soul energy and eaten its fill. Therefore, it did not know when it actually fell asleep on Sumo's body. Sumo did not notice it and just bowed deeply. This time, the little white pig fell head first and fell to the ground with a bang. That fellow's flesh was like a ball. This time, it almost jumped up. Oomph! The little white pig woke up from the fall and then sat on the ground. It opened its eyes adorably and looked at Sumo with a wronged expression. The meaning was obvious. Sumo, what are you doing? Why'd you throw me on the ground? Yi Wu-hui could not help but purse his lips and smile. Sumo also smiled knowingly. When the little white pig was not killing people, it was really a cute pet. It made the atmosphere in the entire ancient courtyard a lot more relaxed. Sumo, I asked you to come here because I actually have a favor to ask of you. I wonder if you are willing to help? At this moment, Yi Wu-hui looked at Sumo and got back to business. Chapter 261. Foamling Ancient Town. Yi Wu-hui and Sumo both arrived a day earlier. In the old courtyard, the two were having a pleasant conversation. Originally, Sumo had some misgivings about the appointment with Gue-ing. After all, Gue-ing had lost the bet that day, and his words were unkind. Moreover, that mine was definitely not a small matter for the three capitals. However, things were out of Sumo's expectations. Blue-robed Yi Wu-hui did not have any murderous aura. Instead, he was gentle and polite, with the demeanor of a great master. Yi Wu-hui said that he had not reached the rebirth state. Could he be immortal? God-burying, world-breaking, ocean extermination, immortal. Yi Wu-hui's shadow puppet was at the 9th stage of god-burying, so it was not an exaggeration to say that he was immortal. Since he was such a powerful immortal, why would he need me, Sumo? These thoughts flashed through Sumo's mind. Sumo, I need you to help me go to a place and take something. Yi Wu-hui said. Oh, Sumo smiled. Where to go and what thing to take? Your puppet's realm is higher than mine. Why don't you let it go? Yi Wu-hui smiled and shook his head. Neither I nor my puppets can enter that place. However, you and your skeleton puppet might be able to help me. Yi Wu-hui said, in the central region of the chaotic god's mainland, there's a country called the Undying Country. There's a cloud manor in the Undying Country. I want you to go to that manor and take something out for me. As for what it is, if you agree, I will tell you when we get to the cloud manor. Undying Country, Cloud Manor? Sumo frowned. He had seen the Undying Country on the Jade Scroll that Guanxiong gave. However, he had never heard of the Cloud Manor. Miss Yi, it is said that the Undying Country is a first-class country in the chaotic god's mainland, and there are many undying cultivators. This trip will be filled with danger. As for the Yin Villa, it was likely that it would not be an easy place to go. I'm just a deity tribulation cultivator. I'm afraid I can't do it. Right? Sumo wanted to decline tactfully, because he always thought that if Yi Wu-hui was unwilling to set foot in a place, why should he venture into it? Yi Wu-hui understood Sumo's thoughts and couldn't help but smile. Don't worry, Sumo. I will go with you to the Undying Kingdom. With me by your side, you'll be safe on the Chaos God's continent. However, the Yin Villa has some relationship with me. Neither I nor my puppets can go within 7,000 miles of the villa. Otherwise, he would definitely trigger many restrictions and attract trouble. That's why I asked for your help. Of course, I won't let you help me for free. Yi Wu-hui smiled. Sumo, how about this? Yi Wu-hui discussed with Sumo. If you come with me to the Undying Kingdom, when we arrive at the Undying Kingdom, I will teach you a set of puppet technique. That will definitely allow your puppet technique to reach a higher level. If you come with me to the Yin Villa, I will gift you an Undying Rel puppet. That puppet is definitely comparable to Ghastly Shadow. If you agree to enter the Siyun Villa, regardless of whether you succeed or not, I will gift you an undying pill. An undying pill can increase the probability of advancing to the undying realm by 30%. If you, Yi Wu Hui said if you in one breath. When he said the fourth, if you, Sumo couldn't help but laugh, because she felt that Yi Wu Hui was very interesting. This woman with a touch of sadness in her eyes gave Sumo a special feeling that she didn't want to guard against her. Yi Wu Hui's body emitted a kind of kindness. What are you laughing at? Yi Wu Hui looked at Sumo and slightly frowned. Hee, it's nothing, Sumo said with a smile. Miss Yi, you don't need to tempt me anymore. I promise you. After all, I'm traveling the chaotic gods continent. Since you said it's safe, then I will accompany you. The reason why Sumo agreed was because she felt that Yi Wu Hui had an extraordinary background. Accompanying such a person could definitely improve her strength. Secondly, Sumo had a good impression of Yi Wu Hui. Thirdly, of course, Yi Wu Hui's conditions were extremely generous. In fact, Sumo had no reason to refuse any one of them. Moreover, Yi Wu Hui always gave people a comfortable feeling. You agree? Yi Wu Hui said. I can only agree to accompany you to see if you can enter the villa or not. We'll talk about it later, Sumo said. All right, Yi Wu Hui nodded. However, I still have to finish what I want to say. Speak, Sumo said. If you help me take out the thing I want in Siyun Villa, I will give you a good fortune, Yi Wu Hui said solemnly. What kind of good fortune? Sumo was curious. I will give you the undead realm, Yi Wu Hui said. Huh? Sumo was slightly stunned when she heard that. Then she said, the undead realm. Is that true? Sumo was only at the early stage of the deity tribulation realm. She was thousands of miles away from the undead realm. Of course, Yi Wu Hui said with a smile. You should believe me. I definitely have that ability. As he said that, Yi Wu Hui's blue robe fluttered slightly. An inexplicable aura instantly spread out. At that moment, Sumo felt like she was bathing in a spring breeze. She felt like she was floating. It was actually an indescribable and inexplicable feeling. Even at that moment, Sumo didn't know that it was a kind of confinement. Whoosh, as the wind blew, Sumo felt carefree both physically and mentally. However, that feeling suddenly changed. All the carefree feeling disappeared in an instant. Sumo felt her body stiffen. She was stunned. She looked at the ghostly shadow puppet again. She didn't know when it had appeared in front of her. And the ghostly shadow was holding a light sword in its hand. That light sword had already reached Sumo's heart. In other words, if the ghostly shadow had taken Sumo's life just now, it would have been effortless. Yi Wu Hui laughed. When she looked again, the ghostly shadow disappeared in an instant. Even the celestial shadow and the demonic shadow were gone. At that moment, Sumo was aghast. In fact, if Yi Wu Hui wanted to kill her, it was simply a matter of lifting a finger. Sumo, don't blame me, Yi Wu Hui said apologetically. I just want to tell you that I don't want anything from you. I just want you to do me a favor. Because you know the puppet technique, and you have seen my inner demon. The light in Yi Wu Hui's eyes dimmed. Also, I want to tell you, I could do whatever I promise. If you help me, I will grant you the undying realm. Yi Wu Hui looked at Sumo and paused. That way, you can be one step closer to the rebirth realm. Sumo's heart shook. Sumo, you want to go to the rebirth realm to find someone, right? Yi Wu Hui suddenly asked. Sumo was stunned. Why do you ask? Hee. Yi Wu Hui smiled sadly. Because many cultivators cultivate desperately and need to go to the rebirth realm to find someone. I also want to go to the rebirth realm to find someone. Sumo listened to Yi Wu Hui's words and did not speak for a long time. Miss Yi, what realm are you in? Sumo asked. I should be the 9th level of the sea annihilation realm. Yi Wu Hui hesitated, because she was not used to the term hidden realm. I'm still one step away from being immortal. How long have you cultivated? Sumo asked. I don't know. Yi Wu Hui smiled bitterly and shook his head. Sumo frowned, because she was not satisfied with this answer. Yi Wu Hui smiled at Sumo and said, Sumo, since you have chosen the rebirth realm, why are you still so obsessed with time? One day, you will understand that time is just a river that has no end. It has no starting point and no ending point. In fact, it is meaningless. Boom. Chapter 262. Time is an endless river. It has no starting point, no ending point, and no meaning. These words came out of Yi Wuhui's mouth, and it was like a prophecy. Sumo listened blankly and was speechless for a long time, because he doesn't remember anything about the three realms. Miss Yi, Sumo understands. Sumo bowed deeply to Yi Wuhui. I promise you, I will go to the undying nation first. If I can help with the sea and villa, I will naturally do my best. Good. It's a deal. Yi Wuhui nodded happily. When do we leave? Sumo asked. 3 days later. I still have some small matters to deal with. To go to the undying nation, we must use the teleportation formation in Wong Capital, so I'll go to Wong Capital City to find you in 3 days. We will meet outside the teleportation formation to the chaotic gods' central region in Wong Capital City, Yi Wuhui said. Good. Sumo nodded. Then it's settled. Since the matter was settled, Sumo was about to leave. However, he suddenly thought of the zombies that appeared out of nowhere and asked, Miss Yi, I have something to ask you. What is it? Go ahead, Yi Wuhui said. What kind of immortal sect is this wind-piercing ancient town? Also, why is there an endless stream of zombies coming out of the street in the ancient town? Sumo asked. Oh, that's what you're asking. Yi Wuhui smiled. It seemed like she knew a lot of details. Tens of thousands of years ago, there was a sect called the Untransforming Sect. The levels of zombies are usually divided into purple zombie, white zombie, green zombie, hair zombie, flying zombie, wandering zombie, prostrate zombie, and untransforming bone. The name of the Untransforming Sect comes from the highest realm of zombies, untransforming bone. Untransforming bone. Untransforming bone? Is that a mortal sect full of zombie cultivators? Sumo asked. Hee, more or less. Yi Wuhui nodded. The Chaos Gods continent is known as the most chaotic continent in the Pure Lands. That untransforming sect was really a zombie immortal sect back then, and there were many almighties in the sect. There were many deity tribulation and undying cultivators. It's just that zombies are cruel and their nature doesn't change. Originally, they only wanted to collect zombies and lead them into the bourgeois sect. However, later on, they actually massacred living beings, turning mortals and cultivators into zombies, and then cultivating them. Finally, the untransforming sect's actions angered a powerful being. Therefore, that powerful being destroyed the bourgeois sect in one night. Fengling ancient town became a ruin. It's just that, back then, that supreme being didn't completely exterminate the untransforming sect. Even the ambushing corpse, the untransforming bones, and the other high-level zombies were destroyed. However, some remnants were left behind, sealed in an ancient path entrance. Only on the 15th of every month could they come out in batches. However, I can't leave the ancient town. Yi Wuhui smiled faintly. Today is the 15th? Sumo counted the days. Today was indeed the 15th, but there was no moonlight on the chaotic gods continent. That was because there was no moon on the chaotic gods continent. No wonder the zombies came out in formation. Huh? Yi Wuhui laughed and said, What you've seen tonight are just small fries, right? Changshu 5 junk convergence? Change. Chisel? Ammonia still roam Fu Jun? Nah. If the bourgeois sect didn't perish, how could there be Ghost Capital, Dream Capital, Green Floating Mountain, and Wangdu Mountain? It's impossible for them to appear. In the entire chaotic gods continent, the most prominent word was probably chaos. In a few thousand years, there might be sects that rise and fall. Miss Yi, then what's your relationship with Ghost Capital? Sumo asked again. Me and Ghost Capital? A trace of craftiness flashed across Yi Wuhui's eyes, and he laughed. I can't tell you that. However, don't worry. No one in Ghost Capital will cause trouble for you in Wangdu. Isn't that right, Grand Elder Wangdu? Hee. Yi Wuhui laughed happily. Oh. Sumo looked at Yi Wuhui. Miss Yi, you're quite well informed. You know that I've become Grand Elder Wangdu? Hee, of course. Wu Hui laughed. I know a thing or two about the chaotic gods continent. Oh, hee. Sumo laughed. In that case, let me ask you about someone. Do you know who he is? Who? Yi Wu Hui's interest was piqued. His name is Guan Xiong. Early stage deity, tribulation, cultivation. At the same time, he's a fat man with a body as big as a ball. Sumo described Guan Xiong's characteristics. Early stage deity tribulation cultivators are a dime a dozen on the chaotic gods continent. There are plenty of fatties with the surname Guan. How am I supposed to find one? Yi Wu Hui shook his head and laughed. But since you've asked, I'll keep an eye out for you. Perhaps I'll hear from you soon. Oh, that's right, Guan Xiong has a female master, a girl in white. She rides on a purple lotus platform, and her name is Miao Long, or should be a cultivator above the deity tribulation, Sumo added. Purple lotus platform? Miao Long? Yi Wu Hui heard Sumo's words, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. Sumo, why are you looking for them? Guan Xiong is a good friend of mine. He committed a crime and was captured by his master to the chaotic gods continent. I'm worried about his safety, so I'm looking for him. Sumo noticed the change in Yi Wu Hui's expression. Why, is there something wrong? There's nothing wrong. Yi Wu Hui didn't say anything, but said calmly, I've heard some things about the chaotic gods continent. I'll let you know as soon as I hear anything. Thank you, Sumo said. Yi Wu Hui nodded. Sumo, that's all. I'll see you in Wangdu City in 3 days. All right, Sumo nodded. Goodbye. Yi Wu Hui looked at Sumo and smiled sweetly. Then, she moved and flew into the air. Ding, ding, dang, dang, ding, dang. The purple wind chimes danced in the wind. In the night, the chimes echoed in windy ancient town. For some reason, when the chimes rang, the whole town seemed to be filled with a sense of serenity. Sumo felt that the gloomy atmosphere around her was dissipating. It was as if all the ominous things were avoiding her. The blue dress finally disappeared into the sky. To Sumo, Yi Wu Hui was a mysterious woman. The little white pig was lying on Sumo's shoulder board. At this time, Sumo had finished her appointment. However, it was only midnight. Sumo wasn't in a hurry to return to Wangdu City, so she left the old courtyard and walked around windy ancient town. Sumo purposely went to the entrance of the old street where the zombies appeared. However, at this moment, there was no longer any gloomy atmosphere in windy ancient town. It was just an ordinary town. At the entrance of the old town, there was a stone tablet. On the stone tablet, there were many strange runes. It was obvious that it was the seal of the zombies left by the Almighty that destroyed the sect. Sumo glanced at it, and her expression changed, because on the back of the stone tablet, there was a line of words, sealing 100,000 zombies here, accumulating some merit. From now on, the chaotic gods have no corpses. Return to my sect. Chapter 263. God of Chaos without a corpse. Return to my sect. Sumo looked at the 3 words, Yi Wu Hui, and frowned slightly, not saying anything for a long time. It turned out that the powerful person mentioned by Yi Wu Hui was actually herself. She could already destroy a sect tens of thousands of years ago, and there was a god-burying expert in that sect. What kind of combat power was that? However, this also explained why Yi Wu Hui would ask Sumo to meet here, and why there was a puppet that Yi Wu Hui made with the 5-color divine soil in ancient Wind Town. Yi Wu Hui was another mystery. Sumo took a deep breath. He had been in the chaotic gods continent for less than half a month, but everything he had seen and heard was extraordinary. Then he collected his thoughts. Sumo didn't need to stay here any longer. He took the little white pig and rode the wind, leaving ancient Wind Town. Sumo originally wanted to return to the forgotten capital, but he suddenly remembered that ancient Wind Town was very close to the ghost city. So Sumo changed direction and went straight to the ghost city. Sumo didn't have many other thoughts, but since it was on the way, he decided to take a look. After all, the ghost city was known as the strongest in the 3 capitals. Moreover, Yi Wu Hui mysteriously didn't tell Sumo about her relationship with the ghost city. This increased Sumo's curiosity. For the 7,000 kilometers, Sumo didn't summon the heavenly wheel ferry boat and only rode the wind. To Sumo, who was in the divine tribulation realm, this bit of distance was nothing. However, Sumo's speed wasn't fast. At 7 in the morning, Sumo was already 300 kilometers away from the ghost city. Thus, the little white pig hid in the storage pouch. This little guy had been crazy for a whole night, so he was probably a little tired after eating to his fill. Immediately after, Sumo had a thought and very naturally changed his face. That was 7th senior sister's wonderful inheritance. Sumo could change her appearance at will. Back then, even Guan Xiong couldn't see through 7th sister's ugly face. After all, many people in Ghost City knew Sumo, so changing her face could save Sumo a lot of trouble. At this moment, Sumo had taken on the appearance of a thin man, fair and clean, with a wisp of hair. His beard made him look like a gentleman. His cultivation was also suppressed to the early stage of the soul transformation realm. As he got closer, the ghost city was right in front of him. From afar, the size of the ghost city was about the same as the forgotten capital city. It was said that Mengdu was the largest of the 3 capitals. Even Ghost City and Forgotten City combined were not as big as Mengdu. The entire Ghost City was made of black stones, and it looked like a single entity. The dark mass of the city gave off an oppressive feeling. However, the city wall was emitting a faint light. Within the light, there were runes shining. At that moment, Sumo narrowed her eyes. Sumo was well-versed in formations. The defensive formation of this ghost city was definitely not something that Wangdu City could compare to. Moreover, Sumo felt that the layout of the ghost city was very strange. However, she couldn't tell the moment. But that city was very special. The ghost city's battle power was number 1 in the 3 capitals. From the layout of the city, one could tell a thing or two. The difference between the ghost city and forgotten capital was that the ghost city's day and night were relatively clear. Night was night, and day was day. The ghost city was not a city that never sleeps. At night, it was relatively quiet, and during the day, it would gradually wake up. At this time, the ghost city's gates were wide open, and there were some early cultivators coming and going. The citizens of the ghost city were mostly cultivators, but they all walked through the city gates. That was mainly a form of respect for the ghost city. Unless there was a very urgent matter, no cultivators would fly over the city walls, and they had to be the original citizens of the ghost city. Otherwise, they would definitely be stopped by the ghost city's defensive formation. Sumo landed near the ghost city, then walked all the way, very naturally entering the city. Once she entered the ghost city, there was a long street. There were many shops on both sides of the street. Because it was morning, it wasn't as busy as Forgotten Capital, but the scale of the shops was definitely not small. Restaurants, theaters, casinos, there was actually everything that one could wish for. Artifact shops, elixir shops, lottery shops, and so on. There was no lack of shops. However, there was only one shop that caught Sumo's attention, because that shop specialized in selling all kinds of puppets. To be honest, that was the first time Sumo saw an immortal shop that specialized in selling puppets. That shop was called Living Beings Pavilion. What a domineering name. Sumo thought to herself. On both sides of the door, there was a couplet, imitating all living beings, thousands of faces, but only one true soul. To comprehend the great Tao, one joy and one sorrow. Do not forget the karma of 10,000 generations. Looking at the couplet, Sumo seemed to have understood something, and then sighed. He directly walked into that shop. The Living Beings Pavilion's shop front wasn't big, but there was a whole different world inside. After Sumo entered, he suddenly felt that the inside was bright and clear. The inside of the Living Beings Pavilion was actually tens of feet wide, very spacious. It was like a small plaza. Around the plaza, there were all kinds of puppets. Many of them were even floating in midair. At that moment, Sumo truly felt like he had widened his horizons. Birds, beasts, plants, fishes, and insects. The puppets here were of all shapes and sizes, and there was everything that one could wish for. However, what caught Sumo's attention the most were the many puppets that were lined up on the northernmost side. Those puppets were all lifelike and lifelike. They were almost identical to real people. Plus, based on their appearances, they were all wearing different styles of clothing. There were young and old, men and women. Each and every one of them stood there like they were alive. However, their eyes were lifeless, and in the eyes of an almighty cultivator, they were puppets. However, that was enough to shock Sumo, because he understood that as long as a cultivator who knew the art of puppetry imbued them with spiritual energy, then these puppets could be used as their own. Those puppets could almost be mistaken for the real thing. "Senior, do you have any puppets you like?" Just then, a young cultivator in gray appeared and politely greeted Sumo. He was a cultivator at the peak of the core formation realm. "Are you in charge here?" Sumo asked. "That's right. Senior, if you like a puppet, I will give you the lowest price." The gray-robed cultivator was all smiles. "I wonder what the purpose of the puppet is Senior looking for? Is it to be a pet, a servant, or for self-defense? Do you want to choose a puppet, or a puppet with a different appearance?" Oh, hearing this, Sumo glanced around. It seemed like the puppets here were used for different purposes. "What's the best puppet you have here? I want to choose one." Sumo glanced at the puppets. However, she had the feeling that these puppets weren't very fond of them. Sumo understood that the best puppets wouldn't be randomly displayed here. "Senior, every puppet in this shop is of the highest quality," the gray-robed cultivator said. He, Sumo looked at the gray-robed cultivator, shook his head, and laughed. "Little cultivator, my time is precious, and I won't waste it on meaningless things. These puppets are not bad. However, they're definitely not the best puppets in your shop. If your pavilion of living has any good puppets, bring them to me. As for the price, I will definitely be able to afford it. If not, I will be leaving." Then, Sumo faintly smiled and prepared to leave. Chapter 264. Sumo froze. "There's a second floor in the Pavilion of Living?" Sumo didn't notice it earlier. As for the gray-robed cultivator, he smiled faintly and waved his hand, striking out a Dharma art. Boom! The entire Pavilion of Living shook. In the middle of the shop, a staircase made of redwood appeared. The staircase was beautifully carved with dragons and phoenixes. There were a total of 19 steps. At the end of the staircase, there was a faint cloud. There was another floor above. Oh, Sumo couldn't help but smile. The Pavilion of Living was full of traps. It was too wonderful for words. "Senior, please follow me." The gray-robed cultivator led the way and went up the stairs. Sumo followed behind. Strangely, every time Sumo and the others went up the staircase disappeared. After 18 steps, the entire staircase disappeared. The gray-robed cultivator and Sumo were standing inside a pavilion. Beneath their feet was a dark red floor. There was no staircase, not even a trace of it. A spatial spell. Sumo was shocked. The Pavilion of Living in the Ghost City actually contained a spatial spell? Otherwise, it couldn't have done this. A spatial spell couldn't be casually laid down. Right now, even if Sumo wanted to go down the stairs, she would have to do some calculations if there was no one to guide her. It seemed like the owner of the Pavilion of Living wasn't an ordinary cultivator. At this moment, Sumo was a little more cautious. Looking at the size of this floor, she noticed that it was much smaller than the previous floor. There were only a dozen puppets in the entire pavilion. In the east, west, north, and south, there were the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise respectively. Those were the puppets of the four spirits. At the same time, there were a few strange beasts that Sumo didn't recognize. However, from the appearance of those strange beasts, she could tell that they weren't ordinary puppets. What caught Sumo's attention the most were the 3 human puppets standing on the easternmost side of the pavilion. The 3 human puppets all wore purple robes. Their long sleeves hung down to their knees, as if there was nothing inside. At the same time, they all wore hoods that covered their faces. However, Sumo could tell from their figures that they were 2 men and 1 woman. The 3 puppets looked very ordinary, completely different from the puppets on the first floor. However, Sumo could clearly feel that the 3 puppets were different, because they were too ordinary. Puppets that were too ordinary were usually not ordinary at all. Sumo stared at the 3 puppets. The purple robes they were wearing were exactly the same as the one Yi Wuhui had given him. This was because they could block all divine senses. Who made these 3 dolls? Sumo asked, because he was wondering if it was Yi Wuhui who did it. He. The gray-robed core formation cultivator laughed and said, "Those 3 dolls are the most precious treasures of our living pavilion. These 3 puppets were all created by the founder of my pavilion of living beings." Oh, the founder. Sumo nodded. The gray-robed core formation cultivator only mentioned the founder and didn't go into details. Obviously, he didn't want to talk about the origin of those puppets in detail. Therefore, Sumo didn't ask further. What's special about these 3 puppets? Sumo asked. The gray-robed core formation cultivator smiled and bowed. Senior, forgive me for being rude. Do you really want these 3 puppets? Every single one of these puppets was worth a fortune. Moreover, our shop will only sell these 3 puppets for top-grade spirit stones. Sumo laughed and said, "Little brother, don't worry. As long as they're good, I won't be stingy. I can also pay with top-grade spirit stones, but I want to see the abilities of these 3 puppets." With that, Sumo flipped her hand and took out 10 top-grade spirit stones. "I'll give these spirit stones to you, little brother. I only want them to be genuine at fair prices." Sumo was very generous. He really didn't care about these things at all, because he really had a mind at home. No one could compare to him. "Thank you, Senior." The gray-robed cultivator took the spirit stones with a smile. He had seen the world, so he respectfully took the spirit stones, but his expression didn't change much. Sumo also praised this pavilion of living shop assistant for having such a calm demeanor. It was really rare. One had to know that 10 top-grade spirit stones were equivalent to 1,000 top-grade spirit stones, which wasn't a small number. "Senior, please take a look." At this moment, the gray-robed cultivator waved his hand and took out a jade slip. The jade slip floated in the air and instantly emitted light, turning into an image. In the image, 3 puppets stood side by side. The first puppet was the first to move. When the hood fell, it turned out to be a dignified, middle-aged man with the faint aura of a king. Although it was a puppet, it looked like a real person. There was a sword light between the man's eyebrows. The sword light was about 3 inches long and stood between his eyes like a third eye. Whoosh, then the puppet moved again. He formed a seal with both hands, and the sword light between his eyebrows flew out and turned into a purple rainbow. The purple rainbow was at least 100 jong long. In the mirror image, there seemed to be a demonic beast, and the purple sword light cut it down at first sight. Although it was only a mirror image, Sumo could feel the power and killing intent of the sword. Moreover, it was a sword chi, not a real flying sword. The second puppet moved as well. It was a female cultivator. Her face was pink, and her eyes were like peach blossoms. The female cultivator formed a seal with both hands, and in the mirror image world, there were plants growing within 100 li. The female cultivator's seal changed, and the plants turned into poisonous snakes. Among them, a peach blossom tree suddenly appeared. The sky was filled with peach blossoms, and in an instant, there was a raging fire. All the poisonous snakes were burned by the raging fire. The earth cracked, mountains collapsed, and rivers dried up. The land was red for thousands of li. Ha ha, ha ha. The female cultivator in purple laughed at the sky in the mirror image world. Under her feet, there were peach blossoms. Sumo's heart was slightly shaken. That female cultivator actually had an endless amount of demonic chi. Was that really a puppet? The third puppet moved as well. However, he seemed to be different. That was because he had actually split into 2. Then, the 2 puppets showed their true faces at the same time. Their eyebrows and eyes were exactly the same, but their expressions were different. One had a pale face without any blood, like a dead person. The other had a gray face with a smile, but there were tears in the smile. They seemed to be a pair of twin puppets. At this time, in the mirror image, they each held an ancient banner, but one was holding a white banner, and the other was holding a banner. Both the white banner and the banners were very plain, without the slightest impurity, but a gray light floated on the black and white banner. It was the light of primal chaos. Whoosh, whoosh. In a mirror image, the two puppets in purple waved the two banners. In an instant, the sky changed color. Countless nether souls and cultivators listened to their orders, filling the sky. Although it was a mirror image, Sumo frowned. What a powerful banner. Could it command all living beings? Whoosh, whoosh. Looking again, the two puppets in the mirror image merged into one. The banner turned black and white. In an instant, everything disappeared and everything became calm. Phew! Sumo exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. The gray-clothed core formation cultivator smiled. Senior, how was it? That was just a simple demonstration. But you should know that the power of the puppets is closely related to the puppet's control. These three puppets are definitely comparable to divine weapons. They won't disappoint you. Sumo nodded. What are the names of these three puppets? King Worship, Peach Fairy, Life, and Death Man. The gray-clothed core formation cultivator answered. Chapter 265. King Mu, Tao Yao, Life, and Death Man. The names of these three puppets were very special. Sumo looked at the three puppets with an indescribable feeling in her heart. It was a feeling of déjà vu. What are these puppets made of? Sumo asked again. Senior, these three puppets were made of 5-colored godly soil, the gray-robed cultivator answered. At the same time, he waved his hand, and the three puppets' hoods were taken off. The three puppets looked exactly the same as Sumo had seen in the mirror. However, these three puppets were not as agile as in the mirror. After all, they were currently in a state where no one was controlling them. 5-colored godly soil? Sumo's heart skipped a beat. Could this be Yi Wuhui's masterpiece? Little brother, may I ask if the founder of our pavilion of living beings was a woman with the surname Yi? No, our founder's surname was not Yi. The gray-robed man smiled. She wasn't a female cultivator either. Oh, Sumo smiled. These three puppets are so exquisite and strange. I really wonder where the founder of your pavilion got the inspiration to create them. What a genius. The gray-robed cultivator smiled. The founder's imagination is wonderful. We juniors do not dare to speculate. Hee hee. Sumo nodded. The gray-robed cultivator's answer was watertight. It was almost impossible to get any information out of him. Senior, which one do you like? The gray-robed cultivator asked. How much are these puppets sold for? Sumo asked. 1,200 supreme-grade spirit stones for each puppet, the gray-robed cultivator answered. 1,200 supreme-grade spirit stones for each puppet. Even Sumo was slightly surprised by this price. One supreme-grade spirit stone was equivalent to 1 million ordinary spirit stones. An ordinary deity tribulation artifact might not even be worth 1,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. Hee. The gray-robed cultivator laughed. Senior, the puppets on the second floor of the Pavilion of Living Beings are all top-notch artifacts. Any one of them could be considered a first-class artifact in the chaotic god's mainland. Senior, choose one. It will definitely be worth it. You definitely won't regret it. Sumo smiled. This small pavilion of living beings was definitely a wealthy place in the Ghost Metropolis. It was unknown how much wealth the puppets in the pavilion had accumulated. The cultivator behind it was definitely not ordinary. If you want all three, how much? Sumo asked. Huh? The gray-robed cultivator was taken aback. He probably didn't expect to meet such a generous guest. One had to know that anyone who could take out 1,200 top-grade spirit stones was already considered a wealthy cultivator. Only the gray-robed cultivator knew that the puppets on the second floor could only be sold once every few hundred years, because it was too expensive. Fortunately, he really met someone who had a mind today. Huh. Senior, are you interested in taking all three? The gray-robed cultivator asked, looking at Sumo. If the price is fair, I can consider it. Sumo smiled. These three puppets gave him a very special feeling, so Sumo wanted to buy them all. However, he didn't have that many top-grade spirit stones on him. At first, he thought that the 3,000 top-grade spirit stones he had would be enough for him to spend. However, He didn't expect these 3 puppets to be so expensive. The gray-robed cultivator frowned and pondered for a moment. I won't hide it from you, Senior. The puppets of the Pavilion of Living Beings are only sold to users. Those who don't understand puppets will never understand the secrets of the Pavilion of Living Beings. Today, since you know your stuff, I won't ask for a fixed price. If you want all 3 puppets, it will be 3,000 top-grade spirit stones. If you only want one, it will still be 1,200 top-grade spirit stones. Not one less. The gray-robed cultivator stated his base price. Hee. Sumo smiled at the gray-robed cultivator and nodded. All right, deal. With that, Sumo took out a storage pouch from her storage pouch. There were exactly 3,000 top-grade spirit stones in the storage pouch. They were taken out from the Spirit Stone Bank in the Forgotten Capital City. Sumo hadn't touched them yet. The 10 top-grade spirit stones were left by Sumo in the past. The gray-robed cultivator took the storage pouch, opened it slightly, and scanned it with his divine sense. Senior, you are so straightforward. The gray-robed cultivator was naturally happy to make such a big deal. Then he took out 3 strangely shaped jade slips from his robe. Senior, these are the jade slips for controlling puppets. These jade slips can only be used once. If you pour your divine sense into them, the jade slips will shatter. From now on, the puppets will only recognize you as their master. The specific control of the puppets will depend on your puppetry skills, to see if you can unleash their full power. Sumo nodded and took the jade slips, then poured her divine sense into them. Crack! The 3 jade slips shattered at the same time. When they looked again, the eyes of the 3 puppets flashed with a bright light. At that moment, they seemed to have come to life. As Sumo poured her divine sense into them, the 3 puppets knelt on one knee at the same time. At that moment, they were Sumo's puppets. With a thought from Sumo, the 3 puppets flew directly into Sumo's storage pouch. However, they didn't enter an ordinary storage pouch, but Sumo's tattered cloth pouch. Sumo was taken aback. After all, the tattered cloth pouch was very picky. Apart from the white skeleton, only the bamboo pole and the copper bowl were qualified to enter it. Later, it even took the divine dragon binding rope from Juyo City. Other than that, very few treasures could enter the tattered cloth pouch. This time, the tattered cloth pouch took the initiative to take the 3 puppets, which showed that they were extraordinary. Senior, congratulations on obtaining supreme treasures. The gray-robed cultivator cupped his hands and said with a smile, Senior, do you still want to look at the other puppets? Ha! Sumo raised his hand and stroked his beard. Then, he shook his head and joked, These 3 puppets have already made me bankrupt. How would I dare to look at them again? Senior, you must be joking. Senior, if you need anything in the future, you are welcome to visit my store at any time. The gray-robed cultivator responded with a smile and then waved his hand. Boom! The Pavilion of Living Beings shook slightly. The stairs that had disappeared just now appeared again. This time, Sumo walked in front, and the gray-robed cultivator followed behind. Sumo didn't look at the other puppets and directly left the store. The gray-robed cultivator walked her out of the store. Buying 3 puppets was a great harvest. Sumo walked around the ghost capital. He found that although the people of the ghost capital came and went, they didn't communicate much with each other, and they all walked in a hurry. The cultivators seemed to be more indifferent to each other. The pace of the ghost capital was obviously faster than that of the forget capital. However, the cultivators' realms were higher. Nascent soul cultivators could be seen everywhere, and Sumo even saw 3 or 4 soul transformation cultivators along the way. The ghost capital wasn't as lively as the forget capital. This capital lacked a kind of vitality and vitality. Moreover, when walking in the ghost capital, Sumo always had a special feeling. A feeling of emptiness. A feeling of loneliness. This was a feeling that Sumo had never had in the forget capital. Sumo couldn't tell why. He didn't find anything special. Thus, Sumo walked around the ghost capital for half a day, then directly went out of the city. Then, he activated the Heavenly Wheel ferry boat and went back to the forget capital. and at the moment when Sumo left the ghost capital, inside the pavilion of living beings, the gray-robed cultivator smiled strangely. A layer of blue light instantly appeared on his body, and then his figure disappeared. The blue light also disappeared. That wasn't a core formation cultivator at all. And Sumo didn't know. Last night, after he left the wind-piercing ancient town, beside the ancient monument at the end of the street, a blue-robed woman gradually appeared. Chapter 266. Forgotten Capital City. This was Sumo's territory. As the great elder of Forgotten Capital City, Sumo naturally could come and go as he pleased. In the Forgotten Capital Elder's Castle, there was an exclusive floor for Sumo. That floor was the top floor of the castle. Sumo didn't need to inform anyone when he came and went, and there was no one to control him. After returning to Forgotten Capital, Sumo didn't see anyone at first, but went straight back to the castle and entered his own top floor. On that floor, there were 3 or 4 rooms that were quite spacious. Thus, Sumo set up his own barrier on this floor. Then, in one of the rooms, he summoned the 3 new puppets. At the same time, he also summoned his number 64 white skeleton. He wanted to study it a bit more. The 4 puppets were all wearing purple robes. First, Mo carefully compared the purple robe with it. From the material to the style, the workmanship, even the formation and runes on the purple robe were exactly the same. It was obviously made by the same person. Yi Wuhui, Sumo thought to himself. However, the gray-clothed cultivator clearly said that the founder of the living pavilion wasn't surnamed Yi, nor was she a female cultivator. Could it be that the gray-clothed cultivator wasn't telling the truth? Of course, there was another possibility. Yi Wuhui's puppet purple robe also came from the living pavilion. This seemed to be the more likely possibility, and Yi Wuhui was inextricably linked to Ghost Capital. Then, Sumo formed a seal with his hand. The 4 puppets moved in unison, following Sumo's thoughts. Of course, his own white skeleton didn't have any problems. The other 3 could also deal with it easily. After a few simple checks, Sumo felt that there were no problems. However, in this small room, he couldn't confirm the true strength of the 3 puppets for the time being. He could only wait to verify it in the future. However, Mo discovered a very interesting phenomenon. When placed together with the 3 puppets, the white skeleton's body would also emit a faint purple glow. Resonance. Sumo frowned. He couldn't think of any reason. However, it wasn't a bad thing for his puppets to resonate with each other. In the end, Mo collected the 4 puppets and put them all back into the ragged sack. Nothing happened that day, and Sumo did not leave the castle. On the second day, Sumo finally met Zhuge and the others. He only said that the ghostly shadow didn't have any ill intentions and just wanted to ask for his help with something. At the same time, Sumo also got a promise from Phantom that she would never have a disagreement with Wangdu because of the Spirit Stone Mine, so everyone could rest assured. Sumo didn't even mention Yi Wuhui. Sumo only brought back good news. The Fengdu Friar was naturally happy. They felt that Sumo was Wangdu's lucky star, bringing good luck to the city. However, Sumo also stated that she was going to the Undying Kingdom and would be leaving after 2 days. The elders of Wangdu naturally didn't want Sumo to leave so soon. In the end, Sumo left behind a jade scroll, saying that if there was any unsolvable problem, she would rush back immediately. As long as she was still in the chaotic God's continent, she would definitely receive the message. And if Sumo were to leave the chaotic God's continent, she would definitely return to Wangdu before leaving. Zhuge Hong and the others obviously understood that Sumo wouldn't be trapped in a city, so they could only agree to it. In the remaining 2 days, Sumo prepared for the trip to the Undying Kingdom. Wangdu City naturally provided Sumo with a lot of equipment, and at the same time, Sumo took out 10,000 spirit stones. Everything was prepared, and they were only waiting for the agreed date. 2 days later, in front of Wangdu's teleportation portal, Sumo officially bid farewell to Zhuge Hong, Jin Mantang, Hualing Jun, Guo Lengyi, Fan Xingyun, Kong Fangzi, Lu Ru, Fu Wanqing, Do Tianlu, and the others. Of course, everyone still had some things to say, and the flirtatious Lu Ru was even more tearful. She gave Sumo a bottle of medicinal pills alone. Sister Lu, you are so reluctant to part with Great Elder. Why don't you give up your wealth, the elixir shop, and travel with Great Elder in the chaotic God's continent? Ha ha! Ji Mantang laughed. The others also joined in the fun. Lu Ru's face was full of shyness, but she stole a glance at Sumo. At that time, it seemed that as long as Sumo agreed, Lu Ru would really leave with Sumo. However, Sumo laughed. Everyone, Sumo is only traveling. No matter where I am, I will definitely remember Wangdu. When I am not around, you must guard Wangdu well. If there is any unsolvable problem, I will return immediately. The first two sentences, Sumo still had a smile on her face, but the second two sentences, her expression became solemn. Wangdu City could be considered as Sumo's base camp in the chaotic God's continent. Wangdu City was grateful for Sumo's kindness, and at the same time, felt that they had a great responsibility, so they could not help but become solemn. Great Elder, take care. Great Elder, don't worry. Great Elder, don't forget Wangdu. Come back soon. The crowd said their goodbyes, and Sumo directly entered the teleportation portal. At the same time, cultivators from all over the world also entered the teleportation portal. Wangdu City's teleportation portal was originally for public use. However, other people had to pay a lot of spirit stones to use it, but Sumo did not have to. Moreover, Sumo had many jade scrolls with her, which could directly connect to Wangdu City's teleportation portal. Above the chaotic God's continent, it was relatively convenient for him to go anywhere. Among the many cultivators, there was a blue-clothed female cultivator with a wind chime in her hand. It was Yi Wuhui. However, she suppressed her cultivation level to the early stage soul transformation realm and did not immediately greet Sumo. It seemed that she did not want to interact with the people of Wangdu. The others did not pay much attention to her, but Sumo naturally saw it and did not point it out. When the time came, Wangdu City's teleportation portal opened. Endless light, Sumo and the others directly entered a state of darkness. Whoosh whoosh, there was wind in their ears, and they gradually felt their consciousness becoming blurry. After an unknown amount of time, whoosh, Sumo only felt his vision brighten, and he had already landed in an empty valley. Beneath his feet was a black Dharma formation that was 100 feet in radius. 7 or 8 cultivators appeared at the same time as him. Wangdu City's teleportation portal could travel up to 1,000,000 miles. They belonged to the cultivators at this station. Among them was naturally the blue-clothed Yi Wuhui. The cultivators that did not know each other looked around, then used their own techniques and flew away. The purple wind chimes jingled. Yi Wuhui walked towards Sumo, smiling. How is it? Wangdu City's teleportation portal is not bad, right? Right now, we are already hundreds of thousands of miles away from Wangdu. This is already part of the chaotic God's continent's central region, and we only use 2 hours. Sumo smiled and nodded. Everything in the chaotic God's continent was indeed of a higher level than White Bones. Where is the Undying Nation? Actually, Sumo already knew the location of the Undying Nation through Guanxiong's Jade Tag. He just didn't want Yi Wuhui to know too much about him. Head east for 10,000 miles, and you will reach the Undying Nation. Yi Wuhui said, that is a relatively large nation in the chaotic God's continent's central region. How do we get there? Sumo asked. I'm here. Of course you don't need to worry. Yi Wuhui smiled, then pointed at the ground. The tip of his finger emitted a radiance, and instantly, a small spell formation appeared. Oh, Sumo smiled. He had only seen Mu Jinghong use this kind of technique before. Let's go. Yi Wuhui very generously pulled Sumo into the formation. The formation was activated. At that moment, Sumo was in a bit of daze, because Yi Wuhui was holding his hand. Once, he held Mu Jinghong's hand like this, heading straight for the St. Will ruins. Mu Jinghong's hand was soft and smooth. At that time, it made Sumo's imagination run wild. But now, He was being held by Yi Wuhui. Yi Wuhui was also a beautiful woman, and she was even more gentle and lovely than Mu Jinghong. Chapter 267. The Chaotic Gods' Undying Nation was 100,000 miles wide. It was a first-class immortal nation of the Chaotic Gods continent. There were many immortal sects and sects in the Undying Nation. However, these sects were under the command of the Undying Dynasty of the Undying Nation. The so-called Undying Dynasty was an immortal cultivation alliance with 11 Undying Realm cultivators as elders. All the important matters of the Undying Nation were decided by the Undying Dynasty. It could be said that the 11 Undying Realm cultivators of the Undying Dynasty were the direct rulers of the Undying Nation. At this moment, Sumo and Yi Wuhui had just come out of the small teleportation array. They appeared in a relatively secluded valley, where the scenery was extremely beautiful. This is the Undying Nation. Yi Wuhui very naturally let go of Sumo's hand. Our current location is Southyu Prefecture. Go all the way west, through Southyu Prefecture is Shiliang Prefecture. The sea and manor we are going to is in the mountains of Shiliang. Oh, Sumo nodded. Actually, in his own jade slip, there were relevant records about Southyu Prefecture and Shiliang Prefecture. It was said that Shiliang was the strongest prefecture in the Undying Nation. Miss Yi, why didn't we go directly to Shiliang, but to Southyu Prefecture? Sumo asked. Hee. Yi Wuhui laughed. There's a saying in the Chaotic Gods continent. Undying scenery. Southyu is number one. Wouldn't it be a pity for you to come to the Undying Nation and not see Southyu scenery? I will bring you around Southyu Prefecture, taste the delicacies of Southyu, and be considered half a host. Half a host? Sumo smiled. Of course it is half a host. Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo and said, You are not a person from the Chaotic Gods continent, and neither am I. However, I have been in many places in the Chaotic Gods continent, but you haven't. Therefore, I say I am half a host. Hee. Everything is up to you. Sumo nodded and didn't say anything else. Two people not from the Chaotic Gods continent, traveling together in the Chaotic Gods' Undying Nation was also an interesting thing. Anyway, Sumo was not in a hurry, so she listened to Yi Wuhui's arrangements. However, Yi Wuhui did not act immediately. Instead, he took out a jade slip from his storage bag and passed it to Sumo. Sumo, I, Yi Wuhui, am a man of my word. This jade slip is for you. It records a top-notch puppet technique called Phantom Soul, and it's definitely not weaker than your white bone skeleton technique. If Yi Wuhui had not taken the initiative to take out this puppet technique, Sumo would have forgotten Yi Wuhui's promise. As long as he accompanied Yi Wuhui to the Undying Kingdom, Yi Wuhui would teach him the puppet technique. Yi Wuhui was a man of his word, and he didn't hesitate at all. Puppetry was extremely important to Sumo. Therefore, Sumo did not stand on ceremony and directly took the jade slip. Then, he immediately used his divine sense to read it, memorizing the entire technique and imprinting it into his sea of knowledge. Crack! As soon as the jade slip was read, it shattered. Sumo, what I'm teaching you is a peerless technique. No one in the entire Chaotic Gods continent can learn it. Therefore, you must not teach it to anyone. Yi Wuhui solemnly told Sumo. Thank you. Don't worry, Miss Yi. Sumo nodded. Sumo received 3 new puppets. The puppet technique was exactly what he needed. After all, his white bone skeleton technique targeted skeletons. At the same time, Sumo had many questions that she wanted to ask Yi Wuhui, but she didn't have the time. Miss Yi, what did you say my puppet technique was called? Sumo said, White bone skeleton technique. Yi Wuhui was taken aback. What? Don't you know the name of your technique? White bone skeleton technique is a top-notch puppet technique in the infinite worlds. Where did you learn it? Oh, hee. Sumo smiled bitterly, but didn't answer Yi Wuhui's question, because he suddenly remembered that the unwithering art on the ancient secular fan was also missing 2 words. White bone unwithering art, white bone puppet technique that seemed to explain it clearly. What were the 2 words missing on the ancient secular fan? And wasn't there a skeleton sitting cross-legged on the fan? If its name was White Bone, then whose cave dwelling did the soul-storing altar belong to? At this moment, Sumo was regretting it. Back on the White Bone continent, she wandered for more than 100 years. She actually didn't go to the soul storage altar cave. It seemed that this matter could only wait for later. Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo thoughtfully, but he was considerate and didn't continue asking. She understood that if he wanted to tell her, he would naturally tell her. Let's go. Take me to Nanyue County to have a look. Sumo stopped his thoughts and smiled. Okay. Yi Wuhui also smiled. The purple wind bells jingled, and the two went straight to the bustling area of South Yu Prefecture. Yi Wuhui looked very happy. At this moment, although Sumo didn't quite understand Yi Wuhui's behavior, she would understand Yi Wuhui's feelings in the future. Such days were very precious to Yi Wuhui. The beauty of immortality was the best in South Yu. That sentence was definitely not false. Sumo and Yi Wuhui didn't ride the wind but walked. In less than an hour, they walked out of the valley. The scenery along the way was really intoxicating. The landscape was like a painting, and they seemed to be walking in a painting. Out of the mountains was a straight and spacious official road, leading straight to South Yu Prefecture City. Yi Wuhui waved one hand, and in an instant, 2 rays of red light landed on the official road, accompanied by 2 long neighs. Looking again, there were 2 maroon horses, strong and powerful, equipped with saddles and reins, and their hooves clattered, as if they were about to gallop. Oh! Sumo was stunned. Looking closely, she recognized that they were 2 puppet horses. Your puppet technique has really reached the acme of perfection, passing off the fake as the real one. Sumo praised sincerely. Hee, this is nothing, just some small toys. Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo, his eyes brightened, and said slyly, Sumo, do you believe it? If you spend enough time with me, I can make you. Oh, Sumo smiled. If you're that good, why don't you try being a puppet? Hee. Yi Wuhui looked deeply at Sumo. Sumo, with you by my side, I don't need to make one. If there's a real one, who would want a puppet? If you're gone, it won't be too late for me to make one. Yi Wuhui's words were a little faint. Huh? Sumo was speechless. After saying that, Yi Wuhui's eyes dimmed, but returned to normal in an instant. Looking again, Yi Wuhui suddenly jumped up, flew onto the saddle, and waved the horsewhip. The maroon horse raised its front hooves and directly galloped away. Sumo, let's see how good your riding skills are. Can you catch up with me? The purple wind chimes jingled along with the galloping horse. Yi Wuhui's blue robe fluttered, and her long sleeves fluttered in the wind. She very happily whipped the horse like a child, and when her voice came, she was already dozens of feet away. At that moment, Sumo's eyes slightly narrowed, and her heart was slightly shocked, because at that moment, she felt that Yi Wuhui must have rarely felt happiness from the heart. In this aspect, she was somewhat like Sumo. Okay. Thus, Sumo loudly responded. Then, he also flew up the horse. The puppet horse was almost no different from a real horse, and even more robust than a real horse. Sumo lightly patted the horse's back. The maroon horse raised its 4 hooves, leaving behind a trail of dust. On the official road of the Undying Kingdom, 2 horses, one in front and one behind. Chapter 268. Nanyue was one of the 4 major states of the Undying Kingdom. Nanyue County City was extremely prosperous, comparable to the dream capital. Sumo and Yi Wuhui had already entered the city. Yi Wuhui had naturally kept the 2 puppet horses. At this moment, it was already noon. Therefore, the 2 of them directly found a restaurant. The restaurant was not small and had a lot of customers. It was called Rain and Spring. This was an immortal restaurant that provided all kinds of delicious spiritual food. Yi Wuhui took Sumo directly to the 2nd floor. There were already a few cultivators upstairs, including Nascent Soul and Soul Transformation. The waiter hurriedly greeted the 2 new guests. Sumo had just arrived, so she naturally listened to Yi Wuhui's arrangements. Yi Wu directly ordered a table of delicious spiritual food. It looked and smelled good and overflowed with spiritual energy. These spiritual food, if it was Sumo in the past, she would probably immediately take out a broken copper bowl to enhance the sacrificial refining. But things were different now, and Sumo no longer needed to do that. However, the little white pig smelled the fragrance and immediately drilled out of Sumo's arms. The last time it absorbed a lot of soul energy, but that did not affect the little white pig to have a full meal today. Spiritual pet. It was not uncommon to see cultivators' spiritual pets in this restaurant. Therefore, the waiter directly prepared a special seat for the little white pig, an extremely high chair. The little white pig squatted on the chair with bright eyes. Of course, it did not need utensils. As long as it wanted to eat something, it directly moved its mind. Then, the spiritual food would directly fly up and land in front of it. Then, the little white pig grunted and began to eat. Some of the surrounding cultivators did not care. Foodie, Sumo looked at the little white pig with disdain. The little white pig, on the other hand, didn't care about that. He ate heartily and happily. Hee. Yi Wu looked at the little white pig with eyes full of love. He kept encouraging it. Hee. Eat more. Only by eating too much could one grow fat. Only when you're chubby will people like you. Aren't you lonely? I can make you a playmate, one that looks exactly like you. Oh, right. Humph. Are you a man or a woman? I'll make you another half. Sumo's hand trembled as she held the wine glass. The little white pig looked at Yi Wu with sparkling eyes and was about to nod. But when it sneaked a glance at Sumo, it saw that Sumo's face was as calm as still water, and she was looking at it coldly. The little white pig was so frightened that it quickly lowered its head and ate in grievance. It's delicious. Cultivate well and don't think about other things. Sumo took a sip of wine. She seemed to be very casual, but her tone was unquestionable. The little white pig heard this and quickly nodded. It didn't dare to look at Yi Wu anymore. This little guy knew how powerful Sumo was, because once Sumo threw it into a tattered cloth bag. For a whole 10 years, she didn't let it out. It wasn't that it fell asleep, but that it couldn't come out. The little white pig was afraid of those dark days where it faced a pile of white bones and skeletons. When Yi Wu saw the little white pig's appearance, he found it funny. He looked at Sumo and said, "You're quite a strict owner. You actually have the heart to do this to such a cute little guy?" When Yi Wu said that, the little white pig acted even more obediently. It chewed its spiritual food slowly and actually became gentle. Sumo snorted coldly. He knew the background of the little white pig very well. That guy looked cute, but he was cunning and quick-witted. No matter how gentle you are, you're still a pig. Sumo glanced at the little white pig. 2 humans and 1 beast, eating and drinking freely. Occasionally, they would tease each other. It was very enjoyable. At this moment, 3 cultivators walked up to the restaurant. 2 males and 1 female. All of them were in the soul transformation realm. The 2 male cultivators were middle-aged and had an imposing appearance. One was wearing a red robe, and the other was wearing a golden robe. The 2 of them looked somewhat similar. They should be a pair of brothers. In addition, the female cultivator was wearing a red robe. She had a charming appearance and a flirtatious gaze. Once the 3 of them entered the restaurant, they sat at a table not far from Sumo and Yi Wu. The 2 male cultivators didn't notice anything, but the female cultivator immediately noticed the little white pig. Thus, a strange look flashed across her eyes. Dragon, elephant, soul, devouring beast. At the same time, she intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Sumo. At first, she only looked at the little white pig. Later on, she seemed to know that Sumo was the owner of the little white pig. That pair of beautiful eyes looked at Sumo. Her eyes were like silk and seemed to have the intention of seducing someone's soul. However, her seduction technique was far inferior to the Bliss Palace's Linghu Hihuan. Sumo talked and laughed casually. She didn't pay attention to her at all. To a woman, this was something that hurt her pride. That female cultivator had her own clan and beauty. She could get whatever she wanted in the Undying Kingdom. When had she ever been ignored like this? Plus, she immediately took a liking to the dragon elephant soul devouring beast. The three divine beasts of the Pure Lands were something that could only be found by chance. As a spirit cultivator, it was hard to resist divine beasts. At this moment, the female cultivator patted her storage pouch. Whoosh! A sparrow with multicolored feathers flew out. The bird was only 6 to 7 inches in size. Its feathers were divided into 5 colors. At the same time, they changed according to the brightness of the light. It had a long beak, short claws, round eyes, and slightly spread wings. Chirp, 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 chirp. Once the bird came out, it glowed and danced around the female cultivator in red. Oomph. Originally, the little white pig was peacefully eating its spiritual food. Its mouth was full of leftovers. However, when the bird chirped, the little white pig suddenly froze. Then its eyes widened and it stopped eating. Oomph! Suddenly, the little white pig turned around and stared at the bird. At that moment, Sumo and Yi Wuhui didn't have much of a reaction. However, the little white pig had already rushed out. Whoosh! In the air, the little white pig's fangs were already revealed. In just a moment, the little white pig's body was already filled with endless murderous intent. Whoosh! Whoosh! The wings under the little white pig's ribs suddenly spread out like wind blades. At that moment, it was absolutely out of everyone's expectations. Not counting the 1,000 years of drunkenness, Sumo and the little white pig had been together for more than 100 years. The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast, one of the 3 divine beasts of the Pure Lands, was definitely not a good person. However, the cute little white pig had always been sensible and docile in front of Sumo. Aside from eating and sleeping, the little white pig's performance could be said to be perfect. In a situation where Sumo didn't encounter any danger, this was the first time the little white pig attacked someone. Moreover, the moment it attacked, it was filled with murderous intent. Everyone in the restaurant was taken aback. The 2 male and 1 female cultivators were also stunned. Spirit beasts definitely understood human nature. The little white pig's current combat strength was not necessarily inferior to that of a soul transformation cultivator. It definitely wouldn't attack others for no reason. However, the little white pig's target was that bird. Chirp, chirp, that bird probably didn't expect to be attacked so suddenly. However, it was obvious that the bird was not ordinary. With a startled cry, the bird suddenly flipped in the air and directly dodged the little white pig's attack. At the same time, the bird suddenly opened its mouth. Whoosh! A golden flame directly swept toward the little white pig. Chapter 269. The 5 elemental divine sparrow and the elephant dracophant soul-devouring beast were the 3 mythological beasts of the Pure Land. Could it be that the little white pig attacked it because of that? Definitely not. This was because the little white pig had dodged the golden flame. Its eyes flashed red, and its wings were like blades as it charged toward the female cultivator in red. The woman in red wasn't prepared, and in a hurry, she suddenly took a step back. However, she was too slow, and a lock of her hair was cut off by the little white pig's windblade. The female cultivator in red turned pale in an instant. Sumo frowned at the sight. The 2 male cultivators next to her were also startled. Evil creature, how dare you hurt people? The 2 male cultivators attacked at the same time. A red light and a golden light crossed each other like a pair of giant scissors and headed straight for the little white pig. The little white pig suddenly attacked people. Sumo never expected this to happen. However, Sumo and the little white pig were telepathically connected. He instantly felt the little white pig's anger. Sumo had never felt such anger before. Oomph! Sumo called out. At the same time, he raised an eyebrow and waved his hand. 2 rays of spiritual energy shot out to meet the 2 soul-dissolving powers that the 2 male cultivators had sent at the little white pig. Sumo would not let them hurt him. Oomph! Boom! Bang! 4 rays of light collided and instantly exploded. Tables, chairs, cups, and plates were scattered all over the 2nd floor. Luckily, the surrounding cultivators were quite strong and did not suffer any injuries. The commotion on the 2nd floor naturally alerted the workers in the shop. 3 or 4 people came up. However, who dare to stand in the way of several soul-dissolving powers? Oomph! Stop! Sumo yelled. However, the little white pig's eyes were bloodshot and it could not control itself. Looking again, Sumo formed a seal with his hands and silently recited a mantra. It was the beast-taming spell, the legacy of eldest senior brother Windwheel. However, Sumo rarely used the beast-taming art because there was no need for it. However, this time, Sumo summoned the little white pig while activating the animal-taming spell. Thus, the little white pig gradually calmed down. Sumo waved his hand, and the little white pig landed back on his shoulder. Whoa! The little guy actually began to lower his head and cry. His teardrops fell down his face. He was extremely sad. Sumo's frown deepened. This was because he could communicate telepathically with the little white pig. However, Sumo did not lose her temper. Sorry, my spirit beast has disturbed the 3 of you. I'm very sorry. Sumo bowed and apologized to the 2 men and 1 woman. At the same time, she said to the waiters, I will pay for all the losses. All the customers on the 2nd floor today will be charged to my account. I'm sorry, everyone. The customers and the waiters did not say anything. They only nodded slightly. However, the 3 cultivators looked displeased. The red-robed female cultivator's expression turned cold. She said to Sumo, Your spirit beast suddenly went berserk, startled my divine sparrow, and cut my hair. Do you think you can solve this problem with just an apology? Chirp, 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 chirp. The 5 elements divine sparrow circled around the red-robed female cultivator. It flapped its wings and chirped nonstop. You bring your bird with you. Sumo sneered in his heart, but he still smiled at them. Miss, my spirit beast was wrong to hurt you. Fortunately, it did not cause any serious damage. How do you want to compensate me? As long as it's fair and reasonable, I'll accept it. Oomph. The red-robed female cultivator glanced at Sumo and thought to herself, You ignored me just now. How can I let you go so easily? How do you want to compensate me? The red-robed female cultivator raised her head and ran her fingers through her hair. She sneered, I'm a princess and I'm very precious. I want you to pay 100 supreme-grade spirit stones for 1 strand of hair. There are 13 strands of hair in total, so you'll pay 1,300 supreme-grade spirit stones. Besides, my divine sparrow was startled, so you'll pay 700 spirit stones. In total, you'll pay 2,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. The red-robed female sneered and looked at Sumo. As long as you pay the spirit stones, I'll let bygones be bygones. 2,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. The customers upstairs and the waiters who were about to clean up were stunned, because that was simply extortion. Yu Linchuan's losses and the expenses of all the customers would cost less than 2 supreme-grade spirit stones. Top-grade spirit stones were not stones. Top-grade spirit stone mines were not something that could be found everywhere. A supreme-grade spirit stone mine appeared in the 3 capitals. That was something that only happened once in 10,000 years. However, the red-robed female cultivator demanded 2,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. Although the cultivators present couldn't say it out loud, they all thought to themselves, what kind of princess is she? 2,000 supreme-grade spirit stones could buy you, and you want to pay for your hair? The red-robed female cultivator was just picking a fight. Yi Wuhui didn't say anything. He just watched in silence. Hearing the red-robed female cultivator's words, Sumo wasn't angry at all. Instead, she smiled and said, Oh, that's easy. I thought you must be very expensive since you're a princess. I didn't expect that it would only be 2,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. I'll give it to you. Hearing Sumo's words, not only the customers and waiters around, but also the red-robed female cultivator was stunned. That's not normal. Shouldn't Sumo be furious? The red-robed female cultivator had a backup plan. However, Yu Wuhui was also puzzled. He thought to himself, Sumo, we have a mine, but we can't be so extravagant, can we? Why only 2,000 supreme-grade spirit stones? However, when Yi Wuhui saw Sumo take out a storage bag, There were indeed 2,000 supreme-grade spirit stones in it. However, seeing that Sumo really took out 2,000 supreme-grade spirit stones, the red-robed female cultivator didn't look happy. Instead, she frowned. Because, to be honest, she didn't need 2,000 supreme-grade spirit stones, but she thought that Sumo was poor. Unexpectedly, Sumo wasn't poor either. That was too infuriating. Sumo Yiwuhue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. 2,000 supreme-grade spirit stones was really a bargain for this red-robed female cultivator. It's okay. Sumo smiled at Yiwuhue and deliberately raised her voice. We have a mind. Isn't it just to let Hengi eat less pig food? He won't get hungry if he eats less. With that, Sumo handed out the storage bag with one hand and patted the little white pig with the other to comfort him. Boom! All the cultivators in the restaurant laughed. Only the two male cultivators who came with the red-robed female cultivator had a gloomy expression. Initially, the red-robed female cultivator wanted to take the 2,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. However, after hearing Sumo's words, she couldn't help but become furious. It was obvious that Sumo was humiliating her on purpose. Isn't my hair equivalent to a meal of pig food? What can't be tolerated? The red-robed female cultivator was infuriated. With a thought, the five elements divine sparrow suddenly let out a cry and pecked at Sumo's eyes. The five elements divine sparrow was a divine beast of the Pure Land. Its true form was not as cute as it looked. It was like a real dragon elephant soul-devouring beast, not a cute pet. Its long beak was like a sword, emitting a golden glow. If a cultivator with a weaker cultivation base were to be pecked, they would be blinded. Chapter 270. Sumo's brows furrowed slightly as a cold light flashed through her eyes. What did those two male cultivators say about her little white pig just now? How dare you hurt me, you filthy creature? Sumo returned the same words. At the same time, Sumo waved a hand. However, Sumo didn't unleash two streaks of light. Instead, she unleashed a huge hand. This was an illusionary white hand that grabbed toward the five-elemental divine vermilion bird. The five-elemental divine vermilion bird was no ordinary creature. However, this divine vermilion bird was just like the little white pig in that it hadn't fully matured yet. Sumo's huge hand hurtled toward the five-elemental divine vermilion bird. It flapped its wings and hurriedly retreated. The five-elemental divine vermilion bird sensed the danger it was in. However, how could Sumo let it escape? The white illusionary hand instantly transformed into a net. The two male cultivators hurriedly unleashed another beam of golden light and a beam of red light at the same time. Perhaps they were hoping for the same outcome again, where the two of them were evenly matched and both of them would be destroyed in one strike. However, Sumo's spell technique was imbued with a hint of the power of the divine tribulation, which was completely different from the one she had unleashed earlier. A hint of the divine tribulation was more than enough. Bam bam. The golden and red lights instantly disappeared upon coming into contact with Sumo's hand. In that instant, it was as if a balloon had exploded. The sound wasn't loud, and there was almost no resistance. The golden-robed and red-robed male cultivators looked at each other, and their expressions shifted slightly. It was easy to tell the difference between a true expert and a true expert. From this spell technique alone, the two male cultivators knew that they were no match for Sumo. Today, they had encountered a tough opponent. Sumo chuckled coldly before gently clenching his hand. As he clenched his fist, the large white net suddenly tightened. Everything happened in an instant. Chirp, chirp. The five-elemental divine vermilion bird wasn't going to give up just like that. Its eyes suddenly lit up, and its gaze was as sharp as that of an eagle's. At the same time, it flapped its wings and released a five-colored mystic light. Whoosh! The five-colored mystic light lit up the entire restaurant. Many of the nearby cultivators couldn't help but praise it. Chirp! A long cry that seemed to tear through the air shook the entire restaurant. It turned out that the red-robed female cultivator had already started forming hand seals. Spirit cultivator? The cultivators in the restaurant raised their eyebrows. The five elements divine vermilion bird had flown toward them on its own, and that was an instinctive attack. However, the woman in the red dress had already made a hand seal, and the five elements divine vermilion bird had already begun her transformation. It became a battle between Sumo and a spirit cultivator. Spirit cultivators were known to be invincible among their peers. At this moment, both Sumo and Yi Wuhui controlled their realms at the early stage of the soul transformation realm. Therefore, everyone in the restaurant was not optimistic about Sumo. Although Sumo had just blocked the male cultivator's attack, they were not involved in the matter and did not know the specific situation. Moreover, there were three of them. In a battle of the same level, with the advantage in numbers, it was only natural that they would have the upper hand. However, Sumo didn't care at all. She was at ease, because he was a divine tribulation. Who? The five elements divine vermilion bird instantly expanded to 7 feet in length, and its wings were 30 feet long. It had a golden beak, red eyes, and a five-colored mystic light erupted from its body. The five-colored mystic light was far more powerful than before, and it was so dazzling that some of the weaker cultivators in the surroundings could barely open their eyes. However, the five elements divine vermilion bird was unable to break through Sumo's white net. Although the white net was also propped up, it seemed to be boundlessly elastic and refused to break. A cold smile appeared on Sumo's face, but she did not continue to attack. Killing intent flashed in the eyes of the woman in the red dress as she made another hand seal. Boom! The five elements divine vermilion bird raised its head and let out a long screech as it charged out of the restaurant through the roof. Dust and smoke rose into the air. Everyone in the restaurant was unable to continue their meal. The five elements divine vermilion bird charged out of the restaurant, and all the cultivators present also teleported out of the restaurant. Everyone wanted to see a battle between spirit cultivators. The world outside the restaurant was naturally vast. The void was more suitable for a battle. The woman in the red dress wore a cold expression as she made another hand seal. Who? The five elements divine vermilion bird opened its beak and spat out a five-color divine flame. The five-color divine flame was the five elements divine vermilion bird's unique technique, and it could incinerate souls. Sizzle, 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 sizzle. Looking again, Sumo's large white net, under the burning of the five-color divine flame, was only left with a few white threads. The five elements divine vermilion bird seemed to be able to escape in an instant. Oh, hee hee. Sumo chuckled. The five elements divine vermilion bird was indeed a mythological beast from the Pure Land. However, Sumo did not take it seriously at all, because he had too many ways to tame this little bird. The simplest way was to summon the tattered sack. Then, everything would be solved. Or, he could summon the black feather god to suppress the divine vermilion bird. At this moment, Sumo only wanted to see what else the woman in the red dress could do. Yi Wuhui was aware of Sumo's cultivation base, so he watched the battle calmly from the side. He was not worried in the slightest. Meanwhile, the golden-robed and red-robed male cultivators looked nervous. Their spells were ineffective against Sumo, so they knew that the green-robed cultivator in front of them was not an ordinary soul-dispelling cultivator. However, it was hard for them to back down now. They did not dare to stop the red-robed female cultivator. Otherwise, if the red-robed female cultivator really caused a ruckus and reported them to the ancestor, the entire undying kingdom would not be at peace. Of course, they should help the red-robed female cultivator. However, they had suffered a setback just now, so they did not know where Sumo came from. They could only watch from the side and hope that things would not get out of hand. However, the red-robed cultivator was really angry. Who dared to provoke her normally? Whoosh, whoosh. The red-robed female cultivator formed another hand seal. Her body actually emitted rays of red light. The red light looked like red mist, but it also looked like red sand. As for the two male cultivators accompanying him, their expressions changed drastically upon seeing the red-robed woman unleash such a spell technique. Ninth sister, the two male cultivators exclaimed. It was a special spell. As soon as he saw the red light, Sumo's expression changed. Sumo's eyes narrowed. In that red light, he actually saw a particle smaller than a speck of dust. Red dust. The red-robed female cultivator's spell was very similar to the red dust spell that Mu Jinghong used in the past. In an instant, Sumo's heart shook. Whoosh! The red sand swirled and headed straight for Sumo. However, the red-robed female cultivator was definitely not as capable as Mu Jinghong. The difference between her red light and Mu Jinghong's was like heaven and earth. However, at that moment, Sumo did not care too much. With a thought, he waved his hand. The power of the deity's tribulation spread out. The red dust was directly swept up by him and kept in his palm. In an instant, the red-robed female cultivator's spell was broken. The scene left the two male cultivators dumbfounded. The red-robed female cultivator's eyes were also filled with fear. She hadn't expected that even though she had used her family's secret technique, it would be easily neutralized by the other party. Meanwhile, Sumo looked at the red sand in her palm. She was no longer in the mood to fight. Collect! Sumo raised her hand and poured the power of the deity's tribulation into it. The net that was only left with white threads suddenly shone brightly. The deity's tribulation net rapidly contracted. The immature five elements divine sparrow could not resist the power of the deity's tribulation and screeched. However, under the restraint of the white net, it gradually shrank to 6 to 7 inches. Sumo sneered and held the divine sparrow in her palm. At that moment, if Sumo exerted some force, she could crush the divine beast of the Pure Land to death. A deity's tribulation almighty. At that moment, the entire Nanhua prefecture was surrounded by many cultivators. Among them, there were naturally people who could guess Sumo's realm. The red-robed female cultivator looked at Sumo in a daze. What's your surname? Sumo looked at the red-robed female cultivator. My surname is Dongfang. The red-robed female cultivator finally calmed down and said proudly, Whoosh, Dongfang clan, the warrior clan. Chapter 271. The Undying Dynasty was a cultivation alliance. It had 11 undying realm cultivators as its elders, with many envoys and deacons under them to exercise many of the Xinming's authority. They even conferred titles to the kings of various provinces to strengthen their rule. The 11 undying cultivators could cause the entire chaotic gods' central region to tremble with just a stomp of their feet. And one of them was an elder with the compound surname Dongfang. Dongfang Fu, Undying Realm Peak Stage, ranked 3rd among the Undying Dynasty's elders. He was definitely a powerful figure in the Undying Dynasty. However, cultivators who were familiar with the Undying Kingdom would understand that the 11 Undying cultivators standing on the Undying Kingdom actually represented different powers. Dongfang Fu had a powerful cultivation clan behind him, the Dongfang clan. It was also the only super first-rate cultivation clan in the Undying Kingdom, because sects were usually stronger than clans in the chaotic gods continent. There were almost no truly powerful clans, while sects that had existed for tens of thousands of years could be found everywhere. There are even sects that were millions of years old. In this aspect, it was the exact opposite of the ancient Shu continent. The ancient Shu continent, also known as the Immortal Continent, was said to be dominated by cultivation clans. The Dongfang clan was able to stand out among the many ancient sects, so they were naturally extraordinary. The entire Dongfang clan dominated the Undying Kingdom's Easternine Prefecture, and the Dongfang clan's leader was the Easternine Prefecture Lord. The Dongfang clan was one of the pillars of the Undying Kingdom. The clan's influence spread throughout the Undying Kingdom, and even the chaotic gods' central region. It was definitely a colossus. Moreover, the Dongfang clan's constitution was unique. According to the legends, the Dongfang clan's ancestors were not from the chaotic gods' continent. They came from beyond the heavens. At the same time, the Dongfang clan was good at raising all kinds of spirit beasts. Thus, they were called the Battle Clan. Those with the compound surname Dongfang could do whatever they wanted in the Undying Kingdom, and no one dared to provoke them. Thus, when the red-robed female cultivator said the word Dongfang, all the cultivators' expressions changed. They knew that the azure-robed male cultivator and the blue-robed female cultivator had poked a hornet's nest. However, Sumo's expression didn't change at all. Yi Wuhui's expression was even more natural than before, with a gentle smile on his face. Two foreign cultivators. At this time, all the cultivators comforted themselves like this. Looking again, a short and fat cultivator hurriedly walked out of the Rain and Spring restaurant. It was a middle-aged man at the great perfection of the soul transformation realm. He cupped his fists and smiled apologetically at the red-robed female cultivator. "So it's the ninth princess. Forgive me for not being able to see you well. Ninth princess, please calm down." The Dongfang family was extremely large. There were no less than 10 female cultivators in the clan who were worthy of the title of princess. However, there were only 2 of them who were the most famous princesses among them. One of them was the youngest princess of the Dongfang clan. This was because the ninth princess was pampered by the Grand Elder and was unruly. She was stubborn and domineering, and was one of the 3 Rakshas's daughters of the Undying Kingdom. Although the ninth princess had the lowest cultivation level among the 3 Rakshas's daughters, she was definitely not weak. It was said that in the entire Dongfang family, only the 2 princesses were allowed to enter the Dongfang family's ancestors' courtyard. Even Dongfang Fu couldn't do this. Just now, many cultivators heard the 2 male cultivators shouting ninth sister. Therefore, the owner of the restaurant immediately figured out who the red-robed female cultivator was. She was the 9th princess of the Dongfang clan, Dongfang Hongran. She was a little she-devil. After offending Dongfang Hongran, one would basically have nowhere to go in the Undying Kingdom. In fact, one would not even be able to survive. Therefore, the owner of the restaurant immediately came out to smooth things over. He was also afraid that he would be implicated. "Senior, I'm afraid this is your first time in the Undying Kingdom. It's a misunderstanding. Everyone, please come back into the restaurant. I will immediately order people to prepare a banquet. It's fate that we met. Today's expenses will be paid by me, Yulinshan." The owner of the restaurant was trying to smooth things over. He was trying to make a big problem into a small one. Therefore, he was like a peacemaker in the middle. At this moment, all the surrounding cultivators had the same thought. After all, no one wanted to offend the Dongfang clan. Otherwise, they could forget about staying in the Undying Kingdom. Meanwhile, the expressions of the 2 male cultivators from the Dongfang clan softened. "Ninth sister." The golden-robed man glanced at Dongfang Hongran. The look in his eyes indicated that he was going to step down. Although Dongfang Hongran harumphed coldly, her expression also softened. This was because she knew that she had snuck out behind her father's back. Otherwise, there would definitely be a divine tribulation realm cultivator accompanying her. Even though she was protected by the ancestor, it would be hard to explain if she caused a big problem. At this moment, as long as Sumo said, "It's a misunderstanding," and let the divine sparrow go, everything would be over. However, Sumo did not have that intention. Dongfang clan. Sumo turned to look at Yi Wuhui and asked on purpose, "Have you heard of this clan?" "Of course I have. The Dongfang clan is famous in the Undying Kingdom. Who doesn't know about them?" Yi Wuhui smiled. Dongfang Hongran sneered when she heard Yi Wuhui's words. She thought to herself, "It's good that you know." However, she did not know that Yi Wuhui was not finished. "However, Sumo, it doesn't matter if you don't know about this second-rate celestial clan, because it's meaningless," Yi Wuhui said with a smile. Yi Wuhui said this naturally and did not feel the slightest bit out of place. In fact, her tone was not sarcastic, but factual. Of course, from Yi Wuhui's perspective, he was speaking the truth. Whoosh! However, all the cultivators in Southie Prefecture were dumbfounded. Just now, it was Sumo and Dongfang Hongran who were fighting each other. The latter's divine tribulation realm suppressed everything. Sumo was quite capable. However, divine tribulation realm cultivator was not worth mentioning compared to the huge Dongfang clan. There were several Undying Realm cultivators in the Dongfang clan, not to mention Divine Tribulation Realm cultivators. However, no one expected the female cultivator who was traveling with Sumo to speak so arrogantly. She was much more arrogant than Sumo. The Dongfang clan was a second-rate celestial clan? Then there would be no first-rate celestial clan in the entire Undying Kingdom. Yi Wuhui's words made all the cultivators present feel that he had gone too far. It was equivalent to looking down on the entire Undying Kingdom. What did you say? Dongfang Hongran frowned. The two male cultivators next to her also raised their brows. Who in the Undying Kingdom would dare to say such a thing? Second-rate celestial clan? Even the entire Chaos God's mainland, the Dongfang clan was definitely a first-rate celestial clan. She said that the Dongfang clan is a second-rate celestial clan. Sumo answered on behalf of Yi Wuhui. She spoke slowly, as if to emphasize the point. At the same time, Sumo held the 5 elements divine sparrow in one hand and raised her other hand with her index finger and thumb. Sumo's next action made everyone speechless. Chirp, cluck, the 5 elements divine sparrow stretched its neck and chirped, because Sumo had plucked one of its 5 colored feathers. The 5 elements divine sparrow had its feathers plucked. At that moment, everyone was stunned. However, one was not enough for Sumo. She plucked a second one. The second was not enough for her. She plucked a third. The 5 elements divine sparrow was trapped in Sumo's palm. There was no way it could escape. It raised its head to the sky and chirped. Ninth Princess, I can pluck all its feathers. Sumo smiled coldly. At that moment, the little white pig was happily doing somersaults on Sumo's shoulder. Oomph. The little white pig seemed to be cheering for Sumo to pluck all the feathers of the divine sparrow. Dongfang Hongran was dumbfounded. She could not believe her eyes. Some people love their pets more than they love themselves. Dongfang Hongran was one of them. Chapter 272. I'm going to kill you. Dongfang Hongran wasn't just saying that. She charged straight at Sumo. Moreover, she was holding an immortal sword in her hand. This time, it was no longer the same as before. Just now, there was some fighting spirit. At this moment, it was as if she was risking her life. At this moment, Dongfang Hongran wanted to kill Sumo. Although she definitely didn't have that kind of ability, she had the attitude. The golden-robed and red-robed cultivators' expressions changed. They knew Dongfang Hongran's temperament the best and knew that things were getting out of hand. As for Sumo, her expression turned cold when she saw Dongfang Hongran using her immortal sword. With a thought, a green radiance flew out from Sumo's hand. Many of the cultivators present didn't even see what it was. He felt an unparalleled force sweeping across the area. Whoosh, clank, when the green light hit Dongfang Hongran's immortal sword. It actually broke it into 2 pieces in an instant. At this moment, everyone was shocked, because Dongfang Hongran's sword was definitely not an ordinary item. It was at least a high-level soul transformation realm treasure, but was actually broken by Sumo's green radiance. When they looked again, Dongfang Hongran was standing in a daze. Between her and Sumo was a bamboo pole that didn't look too conspicuous. The bamboo pole was emitting a faint green radiance. One end of the pole was in Sumo's hand, while the other end was in between Dongfang Hongran's eyebrows. Whoosh! Everyone was shocked. The 2 male cultivators from the Dongfang clan turned pale and instinctively wanted to step forward. Since things had come to this, they couldn't just sit back and watch. I'll kill whoever dares to step forward. Sumo's tone was extremely calm. The 2 male cultivators from the Dongfang clan stopped in their tracks. They didn't dare to take the risk. The golden-robed male cultivator hurriedly cupped his fist and bowed. Senior, my 9th sister was reckless. Please have mercy. Sumo didn't say anything. Dongfang Hongran, on the other hand, gritted her teeth and said to Sumo, if you dare to kill me, you won't be able to leave the Undying Kingdom. You are making the entire Dongfang clan your enemy, or even the entire Undying Kingdom. Oh, hee. Sumo chuckled as he spat out the bamboo pole in his hand. Chi, Dongfang Hongran's forehead was instantly pierced. A circle of blood imprints appeared between his eyebrows. However, Sumo didn't want to kill her. It was just a superficial wound. Senior, the two male cultivators of the Dongfang clan shouted anxiously. The expressions of the cultivators from Nanyue County beside them also changed drastically. The owner of the restaurant followed. Senior, please calm down. If Princess Dongfang Jio were to die here, everyone would be implicated. At that moment, only Dongfang Hongran's expression remained unchanged. In fact, she seemed to be unafraid of death. She didn't open her mouth, but her cheeks were taut. She looked like she was ready to do whatever she wanted. Oomph. Sumo laughed coldly. She looked at Dongfang Hong Ho and said, "Today, I won't kill you. However, it's not that I'm afraid of the Eastern Clan. It's that you're not worth killing." As she spoke, Sumo slowly put away the broken bamboo pole. However, Dongfang Hongren couldn't move at all. The pressure of the divinity tribulation had completely restrained her. She also understood that if Sumo wanted to kill her, it would be as easy as flipping her hand. The two male cultivators knew what was good for them. This was because they understood that no matter how powerful the Eastern Clan was, distant water cannot quench present thirst. There was no benefit in fighting the green-robed cultivator head-on. "Thank you, Senior." The golden-robed and red-robed cultivators bowed at the same time. A gentleman's revenge was a dish best served cold. Not to mention that they were cultivators. "Go back and pass on a message for me." Sumo glanced at Dongfang Hongran and the two male cultivators. "The Eastern Clan owes me a life." The two male cultivators frowned. They didn't quite understand what Sumo meant. However, they didn't ask why. "May I know your name, Senior?" The golden-robed cultivator asked. "My name is Sumo. I'm from the Bone Mainland," Sumo said slowly. The Bone Mainland. All the cultivators present were shocked. In their minds, the Bone Mainland was an inferior continent. How could it have such a powerful cultivator? Any random cultivator from the Chaos Gods continent will be able to reign supreme in the Bone Kingdom. "I'll remember that," the golden-robed cultivator said. Hee. Sumo's lips curled up. "If the Eastern Clan wants to find me, you could go to Western Liangxian Villa. I, Sumo, will be waiting for you." With that, Sumo tightened her grip on the Five Elements Divine Sparrow's hand. Squeak, squeak, the Five Elements Divine Sparrow chirped incessantly. At this moment, everyone thought that Sumo was going to squash the Divine Sparrow to death. However, Sumo suddenly loosened her grip and tossed the Five Elements Divine Sparrow at Dongfang Hongran's feet. Sumo didn't squash the Five Elements Divine Sparrow to death. However, feathers flew in all directions. Sumo really did pluck all of the Divine Sparrow's feathers. Boom! Many cultivators didn't want to laugh, but they couldn't help it. The Five Elements Divine Sparrow was also immobilized by the power of the God's tribulation. Dongfang Hongran and the Five Elemental Divine Vermilion Bird almost fainted from rage. However, there was nothing they could do. Then, Sumo hugged the little white pig in her arms and stroked it. Then, she turned to Yiwuhui and said, "Let's go." Yiwuhui nodded with a smile and didn't say anything. She followed, right behind Sumo, looking very obedient. The purple wind chimes tinkled and echoed. The two of them didn't ride the wind. Instead, they slowly walked out of South Yu Prefecture City. On the long street, the cultivators on both sides automatically dispersed. No one dared to stop them. The South Yu Prefecture cultivators who witnessed this discussed animatedly with different expressions. At this moment, on a tall building not far away, stood four cultivators who were well-dressed. 3 men and 1 woman. In fact, the 3 cultivators had been watching the battle for a long time, but they had been watching from the sidelines. One of the cultivators who was dressed like a young master laughed. "In the Undying Kingdom, there's actually someone who dares to touch the Dongfang clan's tiger, but that's a resounding slap in the face. Dongfang Hongran is arrogant and domineering. Someone should have taught her a lesson long ago." The one who spoke was a heroic female cultivator. With sharp eyebrows and starry eyes, The female cultivator had the valiant and heroic bearing of a man. That's true. However, if something really happens to the ninth princess in our South Yu prefecture, I'm afraid we won't be able to get away with it. After all, South Yu is our territory. If Xianming asks, we will be responsible after all. It won't look good on the Duke either. Another middle-aged cultivator said. His expression was calm, and his divine light was restrained. He gave off a mature and steady feeling. Oh, he. At this moment, the young cultivator who seemed to have the highest status among the four laughed. Mr. Zhu, the scariest one isn't the green-clothed male cultivator called Sumo, right? Young lord, that's right. The middle-aged cultivator smiled faintly. A God's Tribulation cultivator, even if he has some special abilities, is definitely not our match. The scariest one is that blue-clothed female cultivator who almost doesn't speak. The young lord nodded his head. In your opinion, what's the realm of that blue-clothed female cultivator? Forgive me for my poor eyesight. Mr. Zhu laughed bitterly and shook his head in shame. I couldn't tell what realm she was at all. As soon as he said this, the other three cultivators' expressions changed. Chapter 273. The scenery of Nanyue was beautiful. At this moment, Sumo and Yi Wuhui had already left Nanyue County's capital and were once again riding on the puppet horse. However, the two of them did not gallop. Instead, they rode side by side and advanced slowly. The little white pig was bouncing on the puppet horse's neck. Sumo, do you have a grudge against the Dongfang family? Yi Wuhui asked with a smile. Yes, I guess so. Sumo nodded and then patted the little white pig in front of her. To be more precise, this little fellow probably has a grudge against the Dongfang family. Oh, Yi Wuhui was slightly taken aback. At this moment, the little white pig looked at Yi Wuhui pitifully with its big eyes. The previous dragon-elephant soul-devouring beast must have died under the combined attack of the Dongfang family's mighty figure and the five elements divine sparrow. Sumo raised her eyebrows slightly. That was the information that the little white pig had passed on to her. However, that information was incomplete. The little white pig's memories of that year seemed to be a little hazy, or rather, it had only inherited fragments of its memories, and the specific details were unclear. However, it was definitely related to the Dongfang family. Sumo also remembered the dragon-elephant skeleton that was over 30 meters long in the cave abode of the soul storage altar. Oh, Yi Wuhui smiled, and then said, Sumo, you seem to be very concerned about the red light dharma spell of the ninth princess of the Dongfang family. Sumo looked at Yi Wuhui and said with a smile, You noticed that too? Yi Wuhui nodded and said, When that dharma spell was cast, your entire feeling changed instantly. Of course I noticed. Previously, you had been hiding your divine tribulation cultivation. However, when that dharma spell was cast, you immediately used the power of the divine tribulation. That's enough to prove that the dharma spell touched you. Sumo nodded. As expected, Yi Wuhui had a very strong insight. However, Sumo didn't say anything. There were still a few grains of red sand in his palm, but they had already dissipated. He wasn't sure if the Dongfang family had anything to do with Mu Jinghong. However, the two Dao techniques were very similar. The soul storage altar, Mu Jinghong, and the Dongfang family all seemed to be connected somehow. However, everything was like looking at flowers in the fog. It was very unreal. Sumo did not say anything, but Yi Wuhui pursed his lips and smiled. I have an old friend who knows a similar red sand spell. After a while, Sumo paused, and I've been looking for her. An old friend? Hee, that's a woman, right? Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo and smiled slyly. Huh? Sumo looked at Yi Wuhui and smiled bitterly. How did you know? Your eyes told me. Yi Wuhui smiled, but then a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. Sumo, I've seen a person before. Your eyes are very similar to his. Oh. Sumo shook her head and smiled bitterly. Sumo didn't ask who, because she had seen Phantom Shadow's heart demon. The person Yi Wuhui spoke of should be that man in purple. That man in purple should have his own story. The puppet horse moved slowly. Sumo and Yi Wuhui each had their own thoughts, and neither spoke for a while. The beautiful scenery of Nanyue was truly intoxicating. Unfortunately, neither Sumo nor Yi Wuhui was in the mood to appreciate it. The flowers bloomed along the way, slowly returning. However, if one's mind wasn't focused, no matter how beautiful the scenery was, it would be tasteless. Sumo, Yi Wuhui suddenly called. Sumo responded. Sumo, if you can help me get the item in Siyun Villa this time, then I'll help you find that woman in the future. Then, I will help you find that woman in the future. Yi Wuhui looked at Su Mo with clear eyes and said very seriously, What's her name? Sumo was stunned, because he didn't expect Yi Wuhui to say such a thing. After all, he and Yi Wuhui couldn't be considered friends at the moment. My other promises to you remain unchanged. I'll still give you an opportunity to enter the undead realm. Yi Wuhui smiled. She seemed to be afraid that Sumo would misunderstand. Yi Wuhui's smile was really warm. At that moment, a warm current flowed through Sumo's heart. Thank you, Sumo said very sincerely. Her name is Mu Jinghong. However, I believe that I will find her. We've agreed that she will wait for me in the rebirth realm, and I will definitely reach the rebirth realm. Sumo looked at the mountains in the distance with an eternal determination in her eyes. Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo with a faint smile. At that moment, Yi Wuhui's eyes gradually became deep and experienced. It was a gaze that Sumo couldn't understand at the moment. Yi Wuhui finally smiled and nodded. Miss Yi. Sumo looked at Yi Wuhui and said slowly, Don't worry. Just based on what you just said, when we reach Siyun Villa in Western Liang, I will definitely do my best to help you get the item you want. Thank you. Yi Wuhui had a smile on his face. For many years, no matter how much pain Yi Wuhui had in her heart, she always showed her smile to others. At that moment, the sun was setting in the west, and the sky was filled with sunset clouds. At that moment, the wind blew, and the purple wind chimes tinkled crisply. On the puppet horse, Sumo in green and Yi Wuhui in blue rode side by side, facing the morning glow all the way to the west. Their shadows were very, very long, from day to dusk, all the way until night fell. The sky was filled with stars, endlessly resplendent. Many years later, Sumo would always remember the starry sky and night in Nanyue Prefecture. Sumo, every star is a world. Sumo, that means that every star could be a mighty figure. Sumo, let me fly you. I want to reach Siyun Villa in Western Liang as soon as possible. All right. Yi Wuhui kept talking, and Sumo's answers were very simple. Sumo had a feeling that something was wrong. Other than her, Yi Wuhui rarely talked to anyone. That feeling was very strange. Under the night sky, a blue shadow flashed, and Yi Wuhui soared into the sky like a blue butterfly. The two puppet horses were instantly put away, and Yi Wuhui held Sumo's hand and traveled tens of thousands of miles in an instant. At that moment, even as a deity, Sumo felt dizzy, because Yi Wuhui's speed was too fast. That reminded Sumo of the first time Mu Jinghong brought her to ride the wind. The sound of the wind, the sound of the purple wind chimes. Sumo was a little confused. Whoosh, ding ding dang dang, but Yi Wuhui was giggling. She seemed to be flying so fast on purpose. However, her hand was still icy cold. Yi Wuhui's warmth was always on her face, in her heart. Shiliang Prefecture was the largest prefecture in the Immortal Dynasty. However, half of its territory was filled with mountains. It could even be said that the western part of Shiliang Prefecture was all mountains. Shiliang Prefecture might as well be called Shiliang Mountain Country. There were endless mountains, layers upon layers. Yi Wuhui flew quickly with Sumo. Although he did not use spatial spells, his speed was almost at an extreme. Before the starlight dispersed, they arrived at the periphery of Shiliang Mountain. Yi Wuhui waved one hand, and a water mirror appeared in the void. In the water mirror, there were endless mountains, Chapter 274. Purple Vein, Purple Mountain. Even in the water mirror, Sumo could feel the nobility and extraordinariness of the Purple Mountain. It was definitely not an ordinary mountain range. The Purple Vein and the Purple Mountain contained endless spiritual will and even had an indescribable aura. Sumo had never seen a mountain like that. Yi Wuhui shook one of his hands again. Looking again between the several purple mountain peaks in the mirror, there was an antique building complex floating in the air. Pavilions stood in great numbers, and cableways traversed the sky, ancient and elegant. Sumo, that's Siyun Villa. Yi Wuhui looked at the ancient building complex in the water mirror with a complicated expression. Sumo nodded. It's in the deepest part of the western Liang Mountains, 7,000 miles away from here, Yi Wuhui said. 7,000 miles is already a forbidden area for me. I can't accompany you anymore. Then Yi Wuhui put away the water mirror, took out a storage bag, and directly handed it to Sumo. Sumo, in this storage bag is an immortal realm puppet that I gave you. But don't open it for the time being. When you come back, I'll tell you how to control it. Remember, within 7,000 miles of Siyun Villa, you must not use the puppet I gave you. Otherwise, it will trigger the defense of Siyun Villa's puppet. Also, this is an immortal pill. With that, Yi Wuhui turned one of his hands. A purple pill was held in the palm of his hand. It was the size of a bean, and its fragrance was overflowing. Immortal pill? Sumo was also slightly surprised, because this was an immortal realm medicinal pill. In the inheritance of third senior brother Huake, there were several kinds of immortal pill recipes. However, Sumo couldn't refine it at the moment. Therefore, Sumo didn't hesitate and directly took the storage bag and the immortal pill. What do you want me to take out? Sumo asked. Yi Wuhui did not answer Sumo's question immediately. Instead, he took out a black jade slip from his storage bag and gave it to Sumo. Sumo, this is the map of Siyun Villa. At the same time, it was also a teleportation jade slip. In a moment, you will know everything after injecting your divine sense into it. If you encounter any danger in the villa that you can't resist, the jade slip will shatter with a single thought. Then, it will teleport you here. Yi Wuhui carefully instructed Sumo. Yi Wuhui, I won't be buried in the villa forever, right? Sumo joked. What nonsense are you talking about? Yi Wuhui raised his eyebrows and said unhappily, Sumo, don't worry. If anything happens to you, I'll save you even if I have to die. I won't let you die. Sumo was just joking, but she didn't expect Yi Wuhui to answer so seriously. In this world, how many people would risk their lives to save you? Sumo, as long as you follow the map and don't go the wrong way, you shouldn't alarm the puppet defense of Siyun Villa. Apart from the puppets, there is an empty villa, so there is absolutely no danger. Take a look at the jade slip. Sumo nodded, took the jade slip, and sank her divine sense into it. Inside the jade slip, there was a three-dimensional map. As long as Sumo thought about it, the map would appear in front of her. The ancient building complex was in front of her, and the way to go was marked. And what Yi Wuhui wanted was in a courtyard in the villa that was not special. However, Sumo was slightly stunned, because what Yi Wuhui wanted was a puppet that was no more than 3 inches long. The puppet was in the shape of a little girl. She was 7 or 8 years old, wearing a short-sleeved shirt, knee-length shorts, and barefoot. Her hair was divided into two, symmetrically tied into 2 big ribs on both sides of the top of her head, and a small lock of hair was drawn out from the bun, naturally hanging down. There was a protective jade pendant hanging around her neck, and she looked like a porcelain doll. That puppet was vivid and lifelike. Moreover, she was lying on a small bed. The body of the puppet was emitting a faint glow, like a puppet magic weapon. You want that 3-inch puppet? Sumo asked. Yes. Yi Wuhui nodded. What kind of puppet is that? Is a magic weapon? Sumo asked curiously. Sumo, don't ask too much. That puppet is very, very important to me. As long as you help me take it out, I won't stand by and watch anything happen to you in the future. Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo sincerely. I will do my best. Sumo smiled. Also, Sumo, you have to wait until dawn before entering Siyun Villa. After entering the villa, there should be no one to stop you. However, it is unknown whether it is day or night in the villa. If it suddenly turns dark in the villa, you have to stay where you are and do nothing. At the same time, no matter what you see, don't move. At the same time, no matter what you see, don't move. As long as you don't move, no one could see you. As long as you don't move, no one could see you. You have to wait quietly for dawn. You have to wait quietly for dawn. In the villa, when dawn comes, you have to continue walking. If it gets dark again, you have to stay where you are until you get that puppet. And when you get the puppet, you have to use your white bone skeleton technique as a guide. People who can't use the top-level puppet technique can't get the puppet. This is also the key reason why I asked you for help. After you get the puppet, go back the way you came. Unless your life is in danger, don't use the teleportation jade slip, or all your previous efforts will be wasted. Because the jade slip can only teleport you, and won't bring back any grass or trees in the villa. And you only have one chance to enter the villa. Yi Wuhui explained everything very clearly. Yes. Sumo nodded, and then frowned. Missy, I want to ask you something. That Xian villa is so strange. What is it? When Yi Wuhui heard Sumo's question, the melancholy in her eyes became stronger. That is my home, Yi Wuhui said slowly. Your home? Sumo was shocked. Although Sumo felt that there must be some connection between Xian villa and Yi Wuhui before she asked, she didn't expect Yi Wuhui to answer like this. That's right. My home. Yi Wuhui smiled sadly. That kind of expression rarely appeared on Yi Wuhui's face because he usually smiled at Sumo. Sumo frowned. Sumo, don't ask anymore. If it's possible, I will tell you some things in the future. Yi Wuhui smiled bitterly. But I didn't lie to you. It's just that, because of various reasons, I can't enter the villa, and I can't even go 7,000 miles away from the villa. But I want to get that puppet back. Of course, the premise is that you must be safe. That puppet is really important to you? Sumo looked at Yi Wuhui as if she wanted to confirm again. Very important. Yi Wuhui nodded, looked at Sumo seriously, and said slowly, Sumo, that puppet is even more important than my life. I understand. Sumo smiled softly. He didn't ask anything else. Do you have any other instructions? Yi Wuhui thought for a moment. Nothing. Act according to the circumstances, safety first. Sumo, take care, Yi Wuhui said. Sumo nodded. Yi Wuhui, don't worry. Sumo, will do my best. After saying that, Sumo's figure moved, and she rushed into the mountain, disappearing in an instant. Yi Wuhui looked at the direction where Sumo disappeared, and he was a little absent-minded. The purple wind bells tinkled. Chapter 275. The purple mountains were continuous, and the purple mist was dense. At dawn, Sumo stood outside the purple mountains and looked at Xian Villa. That villa was really extraordinary. It was misty in a mountain range. Many purple mountains surrounded it, which made Xian Villa even more noble and extraordinary. At this time, the most eye-catching thing was the solidified purple clouds in the sky above the ancient palaces. Those purple clouds seemed to be a little special. They were condensed and did not disperse. Together, they formed four big words that looked like ancient seals. Mu Yun of the Three Realms. Mu Yun of the Three Realms? Looking at the four words, Sumo felt that they were magnificent and magnificent. However, he did not know what they meant. Just now, he did not see such a scene in the mirror image that Yi Wuhui showed him. The so-called Xian Villa did not have the words Xian. In Sumo's view, those purple clouds were more like an illusion, because he could not think of any other magic that could have such an effect. The sky was getting brighter. Sumo thought of something. The map of the villa that Yi Wuhui gave him was already opened in front of him. A route appeared on the map instantly. However, that route was very strange. The distance from Sumo to the gate of the villa was actually less than 300 meters. However, the route on the map was actually zigzagging. There are even situations where one took 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. Moreover, it was sometimes left and sometimes right, without any pattern to follow. Obviously, there was an extremely complicated formation outside Xian Villa. Without Yi Wuhui's map, with Sumo's current ability, he would definitely not be able to figure out this route. The way he walked was somewhat similar to the way he walked to the cave in the soul-storing altar. It seemed that each step was a different scenery. Sumo calmed himself down and walked to Siyun Villa according to the route. Whoosh! Sumo's movement was very neat and there was no deviation. However, Siyun Villa never disappeared in front of Sumo. This was different from the footwork that little white pig taught Sumo years ago. Although there was a correct path, Sumo still felt an invisible and huge pressure as she approached the manor step by step. The pressure came from everything around him. Although Sumo was a deity tribulation realm cultivator, she still felt extremely small in front of the Purple Mountains and Siyun Villa. He felt as if he was walking into another world. Step by step, he approached the villa. At this time, Sumo was already standing on the steps outside the gate of the villa. There were a total of 19 steps, and each step was 3 feet high. The gate was 4 to 5 feet tall. It was also purple and emitted a faint glow. The golden knocker on the door shone even more brightly. There seemed to be moving clouds above the gate, both real and illusory, drifting in and out of existence. Sumo walked up the stairs with ease. But with every step she took, Sumo felt as if she was ascending to immortality. The feeling that this Siyun Villa gave Sumo was that of a fairyland. Sumo had never experienced such a feeling even in the ancient temple in Silent Death Valley. However, such a huge villa was actually empty. Sumo's divine sense spread out slightly and did not encounter too much resistance. There was no spiritual aura fluctuation in the entire villa. This villa was really, as Yi Wuhui said, it was empty and there were no cultivators. Even Sumo did not see any puppets. Sumo went up the steps and stood directly under the purple door. Then, he gently pushed the door. However, the door did not move at all. At that moment, fortunately, there was no one else. Otherwise, Sumo would definitely feel extremely embarrassed. Although Sumo did not deliberately use his strength, a light wave of a deity tribulation realm cultivator also had a great force. Sumo did not open the door. This was incredible, because it meant that if a nascent soul realm cultivator was in this villa, he was not even qualified to open the door. At this time, Sumo could not help but take a breath of cold air. This Siyun Villa was too heaven-defying. Thinking in his heart, Sumo increased the strength in his hand. The power of the deity tribulation dispersed. Boom, boom. In the beginning, Sumo only used 30% of his strength. However, the door only shook slightly and still could not be opened. Sumo really did not expect this. Open. Sumo gritted his teeth. In the Dan Sea, all the power of the deity tribulation was mobilized, and even the blue skeleton sitting cross-legged on the 9 Dragons deity platform emitted light. The undying energy was endless. Creak, creak. It could be said that Sumo used all his strength, and the door slowly opened. If it was not for Sumo's undying sutra, which could allow the power of the deity tribulation to be endless, she would not have been able to open the door. This point seemed to have been neglected by Yi Wuhui. She was a lifetime immortal, so she might have neglected the problem of opening the door. Shame, Sumo thought in his heart. If he was just a little bit weaker, he might not even be able to enter the door. If that was really the case, it would be too embarrassing for him. Deity tribulation? Sumo smiled wryly in his heart. In truth, before meeting Yi Wuhui, Sumo really thought that his deity tribulation realm was already quite good. Even on the chaotic gods continent, it was a passable realm. However, after meeting Yi Wuhui, Sumo felt that he was still far from it. Above the mortal world, there was immortality. Above immortality, there was reincarnation. And above reincarnation, there were realms. Those words had broadened Sumo's understanding of cultivation. In the real world of cultivation, deity tribulation cultivators had a very low status. But today, it was even more obvious. One deity tribulation cultivator could not open a door. He felt as if he was a mortal, an ant. Sumo sighed in his heart, but he also understood that cultivation needed time. According to Sumo's experience, he was already one of those with heaven-defying opportunities and outstanding talent. Discounting the 1,000 years of drunkenness, he had become a deity tribulation cultivator in a little more than 100 years. This kind of speed was probably unparalleled on the White Bone continent and the Chaotic Gods continent. Creak, Sumo opened the door, but it took a lot of effort. Therefore, he did not completely open the door. He only made a small gap for one person to enter. Sumo did not close the door either. In any case, no one would come in. Sumo suspected that no one in the entire Chaotic Gods continent would be able to enter this place, unless they had a map like Yi Wuhui's. After entering the door, there was a spacious courtyard in front of him. Gray bricks, purple tiles, green light diffused. Ancient trees towered into the sky, exuding vitality. The entire villa had a transcendent and serene beauty. The bluestone path was spotless. On both sides, there were wings, corridors, and railings. The main hall in the middle was grand and magnificent. There was a plaque on it that read, Niantian Pavilion. Sumo glanced at all of this in a hurry and did not look at it in detail, because Sumo knew what he was here for. The map in front of him unfolded as he walked. This time, it was a straight path that led to the second courtyard. Without any hesitation, Sumo followed the bluestone path and headed straight for the second courtyard. The entire Siyun Villa had 4 or 5 courtyards in total. The place he was going was the third courtyard. That should be the inner residence of Siyun Villa. Sumo arrived at the second courtyard without a hitch. However, as soon as he entered the second courtyard, he did not see anything clearly. Whoosh! There was a gust of wind in the air. Chapter 276. In Siyun Villa, the night suddenly fell. There was no sign before the night fell. It was like being in a dark room and suddenly blowing out the light. It became dark all of a sudden, almost instantaneous. As soon as Sumo entered the second courtyard, he had to stop. It was so dark that he couldn't even see his own fingers. At that moment, the whole villa seemed to be a world of its own, because according to Sumo's estimation, he had been in the villa for less than 2 hours. It was impossible for it to be night. This Siyun Villa was really strange. Sumo wanted to spread out his divine sense, but his divine sense was like a mud ox in the sea. There was no response. It felt like when he was in the Wan Wang temple. However, Sumo had been abiding by Yi Wuhui's request and didn't move at all. Whoosh! In an instant, there was a sound of wind. Then, there were lights in the villa. 1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights. They were like stars, lighting up one by one. In the end, there were nearly 100 lights in the second courtyard. At the same time, Sumo sensed that there were lights in other courtyards. At that moment, the whole villa was as bright as day. However, for Siyun Villa, it was still night at this time. Then all of a sudden, a lot of people appeared. The appearance of those people was like the appearance of the night, without any sign. It seemed that at the moment when Sumo blinked, the whole villa became lively. It was a wonderful feeling, as if this space was suddenly inserted into another time and space. Maids in cyan, guards in black, and guards in white came and went, shuttling back and forth. However, they gave Sumo a very strange feeling. Those people, they really exist, don't they? However, their bodies were emitting a faint light. The light was a little blurred. Sumo felt that she had entered a dream. However, if you said that the people in the villa were not real, everything about them was too real. Sumo could even feel their breathing, heartbeats, and even the breeze and dust caused by their footsteps. That was a completely real existence. Sumo was shocked beyond belief. If Yi Wuhui had not warned him that everything he saw was not real, he might not have been able to handle that kind of situation. That was because it was simply too shocking. At this time, even with Yi Wuhui's instructions, Sumo felt unreal when he was in it. He even doubted Yi Wuhui's words. That feeling was actually extremely terrifying. At this moment, the entire villa was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. It was bustling with activity, as if something joyous was happening. Everyone's faces were filled with smiles. A black-robed young master appeared. He was tall, but his appearance was not very handsome. On the contrary, he was somewhat ugly. Beside him, There were 8 white-robed guards. A flying swallow was embroidered on the front of their white robes. "Young master, young master." Everyone bowed to the black-robed young master. The black-robed young master had a kind expression on his face as he returned their greetings. The 8 white-clothed guards beside him also helped the others from time to time. The entire villa was filled with friendliness. From time to time, there were people shuttling between the first and second courtyards. Sumo followed Yi Wuhui's instructions and did not move. Those people actually did not notice Sumo. At that moment, Sumo's feeling was right. To the people in the villa, Sumo was the illusory existence. So, Sumo followed Yi Wuhui's advice and really closed his eyes. Because his divine sense could not be dispersed, closing his eyes could make him calm down. Otherwise, Sumo was really afraid that his mind would be disturbed. "Young master, don't worry. We will definitely do a good job on the old ancestor's birthday." "That's right. Young master, the old ancestor's birthday is counted every 10,000 years. We will definitely not make any mistakes. Although the Muyun Villa is isolated from the world, it should still be a lively place. Everyone has worked hard," the black-robed young master said with a smile. "The old ancestor said that on the day of the birthday, she will definitely reward you handsomely. We will all have a share." "Great. Huh?" Everyone in the courtyard laughed. How could the reward from the old ancestor of the Muyun Villa be bad? Everyone was full of enthusiasm. Although Sumo closed his eyes, he could still hear their conversation. "Muyun Villa? Why is the name of the villa different from what Yi Wuhui told me?" "Siyun? Muyun." The difference of one word seems to have some hidden meaning. At the same time, Sumo also understood that such a lively scene was to prepare for the old ancestor's birthday. But 10,000 years is counted as a whole? This sentence shocked Sumo again. What realm are the cultivators in? 10,000 years is counted as 10 years? At the same time, Sumo opened his eyes curiously. At this moment, he realized that those people were actually mortals in his eyes. However, Sumo understood that no one in this villa could be immortal. Then there was only one explanation. All of them were above the undead realm, even if they were just any maid or servant. The entire villa was at the sempiternal realm or even above. Sumo could not help but be shocked. Everything about this villa made Sumo feel incredulous. Moreover, this was Yi Wuhui's home. What kind of existence was this villa? Wasn't Yi Wuhui's background too powerful? Such a villa could probably sweep through the Pure Land world, right? Was the legendary ancient Shu of the immortal continent just like this? Sumo guessed blindly in his heart. At that moment, he saw the black-robed man and an old servant walk past him. They did not see Sumo either. "Sigh." The old servant shook his head and sighed. "Eldest young master, it would be great if second young master could come back to attend the old ancestor's birthday. He has suffered a lot over the years." "That's right." The black-robed man nodded and sighed. "Xingbai is talented, but he was born into the Yi family and bore too many burdens. Unfortunately, he definitely can't come back." Yi Xingbai. This was the first time Sumo had heard of this name. Then, the black-robed man and the old servant walked further and further away. They headed straight for the third courtyard. Whoosh! Sumo's gaze followed them to the third courtyard. He suddenly felt that his spiritual consciousness had recovered. The next moment, the entire villa was brightly lit up. The day had returned. Then, everything that had happened just now disappeared instantly. In front of him was an empty second courtyard. Everyone in the villa had disappeared. It was as if the dark night had never appeared. Sumo deliberately looked up. The sky above the villa was still filled with those strange purple clouds. Whoosh! Sumo let out a long sigh. Everything that had happened just now had been too bizarre. Fortunately, Sumo's progress had not been affected. He activated the map with a thought. This time, it was still a straight path. Thus, Sumo smoothly passed through the second courtyard and entered the third courtyard. The puppet that Yi Wuhui wanted Sumo to retrieve was in this courtyard. Chapter 277. In the third courtyard, the west wing was the third room. The green bricks and gray tiles gave off an ancient vibe. In front of the west wing, there were many green plants, ancient trees, and exotic flowers and grasses. In fact, Sumo was very curious who took care of these things. There was not a single person in the entire villa. At this moment, the map in front of Sumo instantly unfolded. He was less than 10 zhang away from the room where the puppets were hidden. However, the footwork shown on the map was even more complicated than when Sumo entered the villa. It was just a short distance, but it actually took more than 100 steps. Sumo could not help but be amazed. Could it be that the room with the puppets was more important than the entire villa? Otherwise, why would there be such a complicated formation guarding it? However, Sumo did not hesitate. He calmed himself down and looked at the map. Then, he cautiously walked toward the room according to the footwork shown on the map. What he saw in the night just now made Sumo even more cautious. Yi Wuhui had said that the villa was guarded by puppets. Although Sumo had not seen them yet, once they appeared, Sumo would most likely have to use the teleportation jade slip to escape. Otherwise, he might not be able to keep his life. Because Sumo believed that the realm of those defensive puppets was at least higher than that of ordinary maids and servants. How could Sumo resist puppets at the sempiternal realm? Therefore, Sumo was very careful. However, everything was fine. Although the footwork was complicated, Sumo was still able to make good steps. Then, he walked to the door of the room with relative ease. Sumo gently pushed the door. The situation of opening the door of the villa did not occur. This door opened with a gentle push. The room was not big, and the furnishings were simple. It seemed to be the bedroom of a little girl. Ding, ding, dang, dang. Ding, ding, dang, dang. On the window, there were 3 purple wind chimes. As soon as Sumo opened the door, a gust of wind blew in. The 3 wind chimes tinkled softly. The 3 purple wind chimes were exactly the same as the purple wind chimes that Yi Wuhui carried with him. The purple wind chimes were unique to the Yi clan. This should be Yi Wuhui's room. At this moment, Sumo believed that this villa was Yi Wuhui's home. There was an exquisite little bed in the corner of the room. Next to the pillow, there was indeed that doll. Sumo couldn't tell what material the doll was made of, but she guessed that it wasn't ordinary. The puppet looked like a little doll. Sumo didn't move. Instead, she looked at the doll carefully. The puppet girl's eyebrows and eyes were very similar to Yi Wuhui's. Is this the young Yi Wuhui? Thinking of this, Sumo couldn't help but smile. He reckoned that it was most likely true, because the more she looked at him, the more he looked like her. However, Sumo did not personally take the doll. Yi Wuhui had said that the doll was more important than her life. Therefore, Sumo had to ensure that nothing went wrong. Yi Wuhui also said that she had to use top-level puppetry techniques to take the doll away. So, Sumo stood in the room and made a seal with her hands. Whoosh! The power of the deity's tribulation spread out and rippled with waves of green light. Of course, what Sumo used was the white bone skeleton technique. He was actually a little skeptical. Would the white bone skeleton technique be effective on this 3-inch doll? However, when Sumo used the white bone skeleton technique, the doll's body emitted a faint light. Resonance. That meant that Sumo's technique was effective. That made things easier. Rise! Sumo shouted. The 3-inch doll slowly floated up along with Sumo's white bone skeleton technique. However, at that moment, Sumo felt like she had opened the door to the villa. The doll was only 3 inches tall and could be held in one's palm. However, Sumo felt that it was even heavier than the door to the villa. If not for the deity's tribulation cultivator, if not for the white bone skeleton technique, Sumo would definitely not be able to take this doll away. Even so, Sumo had to use all his strength to activate the unwithering chi in his Dan-si. Keep. Sumo opened the storage bag. However, a small accident happened. The puppet paced back and forth in front of Sumo's storage bag, refusing to enter. It was as if the ordinary storage bag was a disgrace to it. Sumo raised his eyebrows. However, Sumo immediately thought of a way. After all, he still had that magical tattered bag. Keep. With a thought, Sumo opened the tattered bag in the storage bag. Whoosh! This time, under the guidance of the white bone skeleton technique, the doll flew directly into the tattered bag without any hesitation. Only then did Sumo stop the technique. There was already a trace of sweat on his forehead. It was not easy to subdue this 3-inch doll. At the last moment, if Sumo did not have the help of the tattered bag, he might not have been able to take it away. However, no matter what, he finally got the doll. This was half the battle. As long as Sumo could go back the way he came, everything should be fine. To be honest, Sumo felt that everything went smoothly. Except for that night, Sumo did not feel too much danger. However, Sumo did not dare to stay in the villa. Although Sumo had a route to the remaining courtyards, Sumo did not want to cause unnecessary trouble. Therefore, he did not dare to look at them. Whether it was Mu Yun or Si Yun, they were not existences that Sumo should really touch. Everything in the night, if it became real, then Sumo would be reduced to a pulp in a matter of minutes. Even if Wuhui really wanted to save her, he would not be able to do it. Therefore, after getting the doll, Sumo became more nervous and more cautious. Carefully leaving the room, Sumo opened the map again. Fortunately, the route was the same as before. Sumo only needed to walk the steps backward just now. However, at this moment, the villa suddenly turned dark. Night fell again. This time, Sumo was prepared. Therefore, he simply sat cross-legged on the ground and did not move. However, the night was very strange this time. Sumo looked up at the sky. It was already night. However, he saw that it seemed to be daytime in the villa. Creak! The door behind Sumo suddenly opened. A 7- or 8-year-old girl ran out from the inside, hopping and skipping. The little girl went straight through Sumo. Sumo and the little girl did not feel anything. She was wearing short sleeves and knee-length shorts. She was barefoot without shoes. Her hair was symmetrical and tied into 2 big ridges. A small lock of hair was drawn out from the bun and hung down naturally. Around her neck was a protective jade pendant. The little girl was as cute as a porcelain doll. The little girl looked exactly like the doll. However, she was a real person. Sumo frowned. This was Yi Wuhui. He was very sure. Jingle, jingle, jingle. A string of purple wind chimes came out with the little girl. The purple wind chimes were in front, and the little girl was behind. In the courtyard, the purple wind chimes were like swimming fish. They were extremely fast and kept changing from side to side. Often, when the little girl felt that she was about to catch them, they would slip away. After chasing for a long time, she still could not catch them. The little girl stood with her hands on her hips angrily. At this moment, a maid in green was looking at the little girl with a smile on her face. Little princess, the purple wind chimes move with the wind and move with the wind. Only those who can cross the wind can chase after the purple wind chimes. Only those who can chase the chimes as they please can become a true member of the Mayuni family. Although you know how to move, you can't be impatient. As she spoke, the maid in green moved slightly. Her green robe fluttered, and she was more graceful than the wind. The string of purple wind chimes was held in her hand. Did you see it clearly? The young master said that if you don't practice well, you won't be given dinner. At night, there will be 7 fairy fish. The maid in green smiled at the little girl. Humph! Give me the bell. I'll go out and practice. The little girl grabbed the bell, clenched her little fist, and said angrily, I want to eat fish. As she spoke, the little girl walked out. At this moment, Sumo could vaguely see endless murderous intent permeating the outside of the villa. However, no one in the villa seemed to have realized this. Sumo really wanted to shout, because the murderous intent had almost spread through the purple clouds. Whoosh! However, at this moment, there was a gust of wind. Sumo suddenly froze. It was dawn. Chapter 278. It was dawn. However, what he had seen in the night had caused Sumo to ponder over it. If everything in the night was the past of this villa, then it must be a catastrophe, because Sumo could deeply feel the murderous aura outside the villa. However, why were the powerful people in the villa unaware of it? Sumo couldn't figure it out. However, Sumo calmed himself down and continued to move forward. He decided to ask Yi Wuhui carefully after going out. Right now, getting out of the villa was the most important thing. The map was unfolded. Sumo walked according to the route. Jumping, flying, leaping, all kinds of body movements were frequently used. The footwork was extremely complicated, but the scenery in front of Sumo didn't change much. Therefore, Sumo was sure that this was not a space-time formation. This villa was a real existence in the western Liang Mountains. Everything went smoothly. Sumo went straight out of the third courtyard and went to the second courtyard. Then, he went from the second courtyard to the first courtyard. Sumo already saw the purple door. Victory was in sight. Sumo sped up, but he was careful not to make a wrong step. Fortunately, the last part of the road was straight. Whoosh, however, just as Sumo walked to the middle of the courtyard. The wind came, and the sky suddenly darkened. Night fell. Sumo frowned. Why did the night come so suddenly? According to the time interval between the two nights, just now, the night seemed to fall faster this time. Whoosh! However, Sumo didn't have time to think about it. An endless whirlwind rolled up in front of Sumo. At this time, according to Sumo's perception, it should be night in the villa. However, everything he saw seemed to be in the daytime. This seemed to be a continuation of the night just now, because the murderous aura was stronger, covering the whole villa. What Sumo saw shocked him to the core. A man in a purple robe, with long sleeves hanging down, stood in the courtyard, stepping on purple clouds. Purple clothes, long hair, but the man's face was covered by a spell. Sumo's heart skipped a beat. His attire was almost exactly the same as the 3 puppets he had obtained from Ghost City, but he didn't wear a hood. At the same time, Sumo also remembered the purple-clothed man who appeared in Ghastly Shadow's Heart Demon. That's right. The man in purple who had appeared in the villa was none other than that man. Although Sumo was just looking at the man as if nothing had happened, he could feel the immense pressure. The aura of the purple-robed man was simply too strong. Looking again, he was surrounded by a bloody mist. He killed a lot of people. At this moment, the corpses of the 8 white-robed guards of the black-robed young master stood upright in the courtyard. Each of them had a purple bloody hole between their eyebrows, and their eyes were filled with terror. It seemed that even in death, they did not believe anything. His divine soul had been destroyed. It was obvious that they had all died at the hands of the purple-robed cultivator. Sumo couldn't help but be dumbfounded when she saw this. The purple-robed man's methods were simply unparalleled. Immortal realm cultivators were like ants in front of him, and the purple-robed man didn't have the slightest intention of stopping. He waved his left sleeve, which turned into a long spear and went straight to the black-robed young master's eyebrows. The black-robed young master could only retreat hurriedly. Defend. In a hurry, the black-robed young master could still make a seal. Whoosh! Boom! Boom! In an instant, a black beast armor rose under the black-robed young master's feet. The beast armor was as thick as a city wall, shiny and black. It was definitely a divine item. Sumo had never seen such a spell before. Boom! However, the purple-robed man's long sleeve had already arrived. With a loud bang, the beast armor was directly shattered. At this time, the long sleeve of the purple-robed man's right arm had also arrived. This time, if it hit the black-robed young master, he would die without a doubt. Boom! At this critical moment, a black light descended from the sky and directly shook off the purple sleeve. The black light descended from the sky, and it was actually a black-robed man. The black-robed man was tall and slender, and there seemed to be nothing under his clothes. His sleeves reached his knees and fluttered slightly in the wind. The appearance of the sleeves somewhat resembled that of the purple-robed man. The most special thing was that the black-robed man wore a hood and a white mask. His face could not be seen at all. Sumo's heart skipped a beat. Was it that the puppet that Spirit Shadow had once used to make a bet with her? However, Sumo immediately rejected her own thoughts, because she did not know how high the cultivation of the puppet in the villa was, and the one that Spirit Shadow had used was definitely no higher than the undead realm. The puppet that had made the bet was most likely a replica of the puppet in front of her. At this time, the black-robed puppet in the villa blocked the purple-robed man's path. Crow deity! The purple-robed man stopped and said in a complicated tone, "The Yi clan's undying crow deity. Have a Yi clan's patriarch come see me." The purple-robed man's words seemed to be unquestionable. Muyun Villa, today, your name will be erased from the three realms. I want you to die knowing. Kiki, Kiki, the black-robed crow deity, let out a strange laugh. Erase Muyun? That's something that even the venerable of the past could not do. Today, I'm afraid you won't be able to see the Yi clan's patriarch. With that, the crow deity's figure moved, heading straight for the purple-robed man. Next, Sumo saw an unprecedented battle. Then, she heard the sound of a bell. The sound of the bell in the void was as urgent as the beating of a drum. Many figures rose up in the entire villa. Every one of them was comparable to a celestial warrior. At this time, the purple-robed man used his technique. Purple flames soared and wrapped around the crow deity. The crow deity turned out to be a wooden puppet. The dark brown wooden puppet had a slender body and arms like tree branches. Its face was covered with ancient runes, and its eyebrows and eyes could not be seen. The Heaven Continent's Qin clan's puppet. It's really powerful. The purple-robed man seemed to have already known the truth. He sneered, "The dignified crow deity of the Yi clan is actually a puppet of the Qin clan. How ridiculous!" Then, the purple-robed man suddenly shook his long sleeve. From within the sleeve, a hand suddenly stretched out and directly grabbed the puppet's abdomen. The hand turned out to be a ghastly white bone, with no flesh to be seen. The white bone glowed even brighter than the celestial sword. White bone. The moment Sumo saw the white bone, his expression suddenly changed, because he could tell at a glance. The white bone under the purple robe was definitely the kind of white bone skeleton that he had obtained from the Silent Death Valley. Because in Sumo's eyes, the white bone skeleton's arm faintly carried a touch of golden light. That was the golden skeleton that Sumo had been unable to control until now. Sumo was shocked. Venerable? Crow deity? The Heaven Continent's Qing clan? Sumo had never heard of any of these. It seemed to be something from another world. Who was the person under the purple robe? Sumo imagined his number 64 white bone skeleton. If he took out that skeleton and let purple clouds appear under its feet, then he used a technique to cover its face. Then, it would be exactly the same as the purple-robed man in front of him. Hiss! Thinking of this, Sumo could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. What was going on? And at this time, everything in the villa was developing in leaps and bounds. The crow deity was directly killed by the purple-robed man's white bone claws. Whoosh, whoosh! Inside the villa, the wind rose again. But this time, it did not turn into daytime. Instead, the scenery inside the villa changed. Sumo saw the entire villa. Blood flowed like a river, bones piled up like a mountain. Muyun Villa became a battlefield of carnage. The purple mountain mourned, the green tiles whimpered. In the entire villa, only the little girl was crying out, "Brother," in a heart-wrenching voice. Ding, ding, dang, dang. Ding, ding. The wind chimes shook gently as if they were crying. The villa was in a mess. The face of the purple-robed man flashed for a moment. It was an illusion. It was a handsome and melancholic man. Sumo's eyes were filled with fear. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.